Hey, hello. Hi. Welcome along to this thing that I do sometimes, occasionally. So, okay. I, on Patreon and in the various places that you support me, technically one of the rewards is that there's a little room on the Discord and you can ask questions in there. And then I'm supposed to, just about once a month, theoretically, ideally, do a little podcast thing like this over here, where I answer those questions. Just so real quick, go through and just have a little bit of a chat. That's supposed to happen. That's theoretically that's the plan. And that's been happening regularly. Don't worry about it. It's been you haven't seen it. You haven't seen it. Just maybe it didn't show up. YouTube didn't show it to you, but that's been happening. I've been doing it regularly. Please don't look at the timestamps on these questions. Don't look at them. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's completely okay. It's not real. It's a trick that is being played on you by the devil, and you have to turn to Jesus in order not to be tricked. Yeah. No, it's been a minute. It's been a bit, but might as well do it now, I guess. So that's what we're doing. By the way, look at the little scroll down there. It doesn't probably look very different for you, but it looks a lot different for me because I spent like an hour and a half today trying to figure out. So having a bit of scrolling text like this, you'd think it would be easy on YouTube, right? Like it's like, oh, you can just kind of load that into OBS and say, hey, please scroll this text for me, right? And OBS can do that. OBS has a function for scrolling text across your screen. And it works great so long as you're not putting too much text into it is the problem. It turns out there's an upper limit where the texture that can be generated by OBS through its like graphical rendering engine can only be something like 16,400 whatever pixels wide. And it turns out if you have like over 1,000 members on the channel at this point, I think, who have been members for more than a month, and you try and write all of that out as text, that's more than that. That's a lot. That's many more pixels than what OBS is willing to render. And so if you try and do it, OBS gets cranky with you and starts getting weird and has trouble rendering text and doing things. So I sat down and was like, okay, that can't be that difficult to figure out. And indeed, it wasn't that hard. I figured out you can basically, I had to write an HTML document myself, like an HTML file, where I defined a text scrolling function, which there is HTML code for, and then I can put all of that into a span, and then, okay, cool, that'll output, and then I can load that into OBS as a browser source, and that'll do that. So this is just text that's scrolling. It's not particularly impressive, and you're not supposed to be impressed by it, but it took me longer than it probably should have to figure out how the fuck to do that when I have, like, over 1,000 names that need to scroll. So yeah, but I figured it out. Hey, let's like so there's that. I'm gonna try and update it more frequently because the last one I got it to work, right? Like I barely in OBS I managed to just sort of barely crunch the numbers such that I could get the list to work. But then we started in on like Digital Circus and other things, and then a bunch more people signed up to be members, and then it's like, oh, I can't fucking get this fucking thing to work, and I spent hours on that, trying to just fucking get OBS to do it, and I thought, do I need to have like 2 rows of text above each other? Like, I don't fucking... No, I just had to dust off ancient HTML coding skills that once upon a time in the long ago forgotten times I used to have. Anyway, questions. There's queues. I've got 34 of them. I'm going to A them. And the first one's from Shifu Dajiao, who's one of the mods over on my Discord. One of my older friends, also. Imaginary scenario. You get the chance to go back and start over on YouTube. Would you still do design analysis? And would your picked games have been different or another media altogether? God, I have ruminated on this question so many times. Like, there are those, like, the slightly dark moments, right? Like, where you sort of go, if I'd just been there early, right? Like, if I'd only started YouTube a little bit sooner and started building an audience, like, how many more subscribers could I have now? Like, how much better could I be doing? Could I be more influential? Like, and... those are not good thoughts, like the thoughts you shouldn't pursue too far, because down that way lays madness, but I've definitely thought about it. But the thing is, like, YouTube, back when I started, was a wildly different place, right, like, than it is now. And, like, YouTube is a constantly evolving beast. There was the period of, like, when the Let's Players got big, when your Markipliers and Jacksepticeye's and PewDiePie's, like, really had their rise, and that was not really because they were the best content creators in the world, although they did become very good and have become very competent as entertainers over time. Not going to delve into any of the problems with any of them. But it was a very different place, and like they were created essentially by the algorithm, which started prioritizing watch time above all else, and they were engaging entertainers who were able to generate a lot of watch time on their Let's Plays, right? And so they experienced this absolutely meteoric rise. Whereas with the change of emphasis to watch time, a lot of independent animation on YouTube got absolutely fucking crushed, which like there was a flourishing small independent animation scene on YouTube, but they tended to rely on like very short videos with short clips, right? Like because producing animation is a bit of a fucking hassle. And so like if I were to go back in time and start over, what I would do is, like, I don't remember exactly what the state of YouTube was when I started, really. What I would do is I would go back and I would apply content creator brain to what's going on. Like, I have the skill set that I have, so it's not like I don't think I would just, like, oh, I'll become a Let's Player and ride the Markiplier wave, necessarily, but, like, I would apply my content creator brain from the now, and I would do the kind of content that I already do. Like, I would do a design analysis, animation analysis, things like that. But I just do them on whatever the hell happens to be most popular, right? Like, and at the time when I started, League of Legends was one of the most popular things and one of the rising things in the world. It was a very open market. Like, part of the reason, like I said, Markiplier and all the Let's Players, they were created by the algorithm at the time, right? Like, not just by their effort. They put in a lot of effort, but if the algorithm had not just had that blip where it said, oh, we favor this now, they wouldn't really have gotten anywhere in the way that, or they wouldn't have gotten anywhere in the way that they did, right? Same way for me. Like, it was the same thing for me. I started doing the kinds of things that I'm doing on YouTube just mostly because of, like, well, no one else is doing it, and I want there to be some kind of animation and creative critical discussion around this video game that I'm obsessed with, League of Legends, so I started doing it. And because there wasn't really, like, there were a couple of lore explainers, like, people sort of like, this is the stuff that's in the lore, and this is what's happening, but there weren't really people being critical on the level that I was, right? Not in the sense of, like, I'm so high level and I'm so intellectual, but in the sense of that just wasn't a style of content that was really around at the time. And apparently I happened to get lucky and hit at a sweet spot where there was a appetite for it and the algorithm was willing to show it, right? And so if I go back, like, the sensible play is probably just to do the same thing all over again, but do it better with better skills, right, that I have, and probably to diversify earlier to get away from being a League of Legends niche content creator sooner. But I don't think, like, rationally speaking, I don't know why I would want to do anything different, really, except I would want to start earlier. And so that, like, I could have gotten further by now, right? But I probably would do the same thing. Like, I've sort of talked, I started from a place where I was like, oh, I could actually do something different, but thinking through it, it's like, the skills I have now are all skills I developed to do the thing that I was doing. So those are the skills I have, so why not use them for the thing that I was doing anyway? Mostly, I just want to be 22 again. Right? I just want to be in my early 20s again, please. I want to be able to wake up in the morning without pain in some part of my body. That would be nice. Arathane, if you were given unlimited time funding, what other creative interests would you like to pursue? You're asking a person with ADHD, and the answer is all of them. All of the oil paint. I wouldn't mind spending like 6 months with a personal trainer, just working on building up all my joint strength and like all of my physical strength, and doing bouldering. Maybe that seems like fun. I'd love to do that. If I had infinite money, I would buy a much bigger, really big house, and I would fill an entire room with instruments. Like, I would have a harp, like a big fucking concert floor harp. I would have what are they called? Not the piano, but the older thing that sounds like the thing. What the hell's it called? The name keeps escaping me. But you know the one I'm talking about. I'd have a pipe organ. I would fucking have a pipe organ. I don't know, maybe I'd buy a church and then I'd have a pipe organ. I would have a pipe organ. I would have so many instruments. You don't even know how many instruments I would have. I would have a woodworking shop. Tell you what, I'd have a woodworking shop. I would have so many Warhammer armies. You don't even know how many I would have. I would have just truly a degenerate amount of Warhammer armies. I would have an amount of Warhammer armies that makes me, like, my entire home an environmental concern due to the sheer amount of plastic pollution that is inside of it. Yeah, no, like all of them. I have ADHD. Like boy, I wouldn't have a choice. I should not have infinite money and time because that would not end well for anyone. NG, after the recent Worlds victory by T1 and a best plays from Grand Finals montage that was essentially filled with faker moments, his status as the GOAT is all but solidified in every sense of the word. What do you think someone would have to do to even be considered in such a legendary company now that he's the figurehead of the Hall of Fame with such a notorious track record? Win Worlds 5 times. Like, I mean, yeah, faker is a special case. Again, it's that time and place kind of situation, because, like, certainly to my mind, faker is the first player who, like, has that. It's a tedious comparison to make to, like, real, like, air quotes, real sports stars, but, like, he's the guy who has that, like Michael Jordan, Danish Mikael Laudrup, who has that particular quality of, like, a great sports athlete where you watch him do some shit and you sit up in your seat and you go, how's that? Like, faker, what was that? That is a faker moment, right? And that's the kind of the thing you have to have. It's not enough just to win a bunch of tournaments and be really good. You have to have those moments where everyone who knows what they're seeing can't believe what they're seeing, right? And faker is probably the player who has, like, the most of those. Like, he has the most of that ability to surprise you by finding a way to do something that you, like, to pull something out of thin air that you wouldn't have thought would be possible to pull out of thin air. And, like, faker hasn't always won. He has had loss streaks, right? Like, he has been stuck on teams where, like, he just couldn't shine and that just couldn't go the distance, right? But he's always been faker. Everyone always knows that when that motherfucker is on the rift, you kind of have to, like, you have to be ready for something stupid and unpredictable to happen for that man to pull some kind of mechanical skill out of the thin ether and, like, feed you your own ass, like, directly through your ear holes, right? I think that's the thing that makes a player like that, is the player who's capable of doing something that, like, no amount of analysis or knowledge prepares you for seeing it actually happen, right? I don't know that there's ever going to be another player like that. Like, both because you don't get a lot of those in any discipline of anything, but also because League of Legends is changing. Like, faker, again, this thing about being products of your time and environment, like, faker also came up at a time in League of Legends and the way that the game was constructed where different things were possible mechanically, where the game emphasized different kinds of performance, right? And League of Legends has gone through many of these eras of, like, not just meta, but, like, eras of what the game engines are capable of, like, of what the game is willing to allow for, what the game is capable of allowing for. And I don't know that the circumstances that produced faker will ever come around again, right? Like, I don't necessarily think there's going to be a star player like faker on that level again. But, you know, I'm also just a European talking out my ass. You know, there probably already is a faker somewhere in like, the Chinese or Southeast Asian market who's just waiting for their faker what was that moment to happen, and then we'll all recognize it. But, you know, don't know that I'll be into League of Legends esports by that time. Zinzen Who, do you have any intentions of remastering, re-recording Snake Eater anytime soon? Sort of. I've toyed with that idea. I half want to get my buddy Trey Watson to do an instrumental for it, and, like, make the instrumental on my cover of Snake Eater doesn't sound very good because I took the instrumental for the bass version of Snake Eater and I had to pitch it down several levels because, like, I am no Cynthia Harrell. That's not where my vocal range is, and it doesn't sound very good. Like, the instrumentation is and I feel like I'd like a clean instrumentation and maybe one that's a little bit different from the original. And I've been thinking about maybe asking Trey to help me with that, but they have projects that they're busy with, and I don't have time to really commit to that right now. So, but I've thought about it for sure. I played Pokemon Infinite Fusions a fair bit. Is that something you're interested in? And if so, is there any chance of seeing that on one of your many channels? So many channels. I've thought of it. Like, I've looked at Pokemon Infinite Fusion. Like, it might be fun to take a look at, like, grab a bunch of fusions and, like, talk about the ways in which a fusion between these two things gets interpreted by that particular thing, that particular little tool. Whether there's videos in that, I don't know, maybe on this channel, like, just as a fun little relaxing, I'm going to spend a couple of hours doing nothing useful or interesting. Sure. I don't know if there's a full video in it anywhere. And, like, it's not like I'm running out of Pokemon content over on the Shorts channel anytime soon, so, you know. Let's see, Moston, what are your thoughts on fat and skinny character designs adhering to tanky versus swift in terms of mobility? Similarly, are there any examples of it working the other way around, and how should one go about doing so? I'll start at the last bit. How should one go about doing so? Because that's the easiest one to answer, which is I don't know. And neither does anyone else, because that's contextual. That is like exactly how should you pull off a certain kind of character design is contextual to the project that you're working within. Like doing it in a game like Pokemon is not the same as doing it in a game like Call of Duty, for example. Like the contexts there are different. The way that you pull that off, like the associations, like so much of so tanky means big and fat, and like fast means small and skinny, is a trope, right? Like that's a convention that exists within visual art, especially within visual art and video games, but also like superhero comics do the same thing, right? Like the Juggernaut versus the Flash, right? How are those characters rendered? How are they displayed? Like, well, in different ways. But the fact of the matter is that in reality, that's not really how it goes, right? Like in reality, very large people can be very fast indeed, whereas very small and skinny people can be quite slow because they have like quite literally less muscle mass to work with, right? Like if you look at the legs of a sprinter in the Tour de France, it's like that's not small and slender. That's like those things are like fucking tree trunks. So it's a convention, right? Like it's a convention, it's a shorthand. It is a shorthand which is useful, especially in game design, because when you see an enemy barreling down on you in an action game of any kind, and you go, okay, they're huge physically, and they're very bulky, okay, that translates for me into like, that means that the game is telling me that mechanically, this enemy operates in this manner, right? And it gives you a set of expectations. It allows you to interact with this interactable game object. It allows you to read the intention of the game design, right? And that's something that's like, it is a set of archetypes and conventions that have problems, right? Like, because they are divorced from reality in a way that can sometimes have, like, negative impacts, right? Like, this idea that everyone who's, like, big, who's fat, is always slow is, like, that's a trope that interacts with a whole bunch of negative stereotypes about overweight and fat people, right? Like, and the idea that small people are fast and like quick-witted, often also like the classic double act, right? Like, is that you have the big guy who's stupid and the small guy who's smart, right? That's the classic double act, right? But that's a thing that ties the idea of being fat to a lack of intelligence, of being big to a lack of intelligence, and ties physical size to these things. And that's the kind of shit that, if it is uncritically used and unchallenged in culture across like a wide range of media, it causes problems, right? Like, it reinforces negative pre-existing social stereotypes, and it causes harm. That's not really something you can fix by doing it different in any one video game, right? And if you do it differently, you run up against the problem that so much of video game visual language is constructed around the assumption that everyone knows this convention and everyone is instinctually able to read that convention and understand it as a piece of communication, right? And so if you want to challenge it, it takes a lot more resources to challenge it than it does to simply implement it as it is. Because everyone understands what the convention is, everyone can read how the convention works. People are not going to be able to instinctually read your subversion of the convention. They're not going to be instinctually able to read your little specific creative move to step outside of the convention, right? Like, that's explanation that you have to do in order to get the audience up to speed so that they understand what you're doing. You can't rely on the shorthand, which means you have to go longhand, right? Like, you have to do the full explanation. And that cuts into time, that cuts into budget, and that can be, like it is a thing I have experienced many times before, a story that is so obsessed with trying to deconstruct and undo all of the tropes and, like, really lampshade everything and, like never do the thing which is conventional, ends up running completely into the fucking mud because it has to stop and explain itself every 5 minutes and go, aha, you thought that this was the trope of the thing, but it's not the trope of the thing. We're doing a different thing, and you just made an assumption, and that makes an ass out of you, and, like, let me explain to you how different things are in this special, unique story. And that doesn't necessarily make for a good story, right? Like, that doesn't even necessarily make for a good video game if you have to readjust all of your reflexes because this game decided that the small, skinny enemies are slow and the big fat ones are really, really fast but don't hit very hard. Like, it completely reverses that. If it just does that because we're subverting convention, that's just kind of annoying, right? Like, if you're gonna do it, you gotta have to have a reason for doing it, and that's it's a hard thing. It's a difficult thing, right? Because like, if you as an individual person just want to make a webcomic and you just want to use some visual shorthand to get information across to the audience without having to explain everything all the time, then there's not really anything wrong with using the shorthands and conventions that are available, right? You just have to be ready and willing and capable of also balancing out the convention and the stereotype with something new, something original, something that like fleshes out the situation, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with having a big dumb guy, but maybe you should think about having a big guy who isn't dumb, or a big guy who's fast, right? Like, just like demonstrate in the way that you use the convention that it's not a convention that comes from natural law. It's like a choice that you make. It's complicated, right? Like, and so you ask about how should one go about doing so. That's contextual. Depends on what you're doing. Because like, if I load up a video game and I see a huge guy coming towards me, and all of a sudden he moves really quickly, and the little guy moves really slow but has 5 billion HP, is like, I'll go, okay, that's interesting. And now it's annoying, because that's fighting me on all of the instincts and all of the conventions and all of the reading. Like, all of my skills at reading what a visual design is trying to tell me are just being thrown out here, and I have to readjust all the time. And in a twitchy video game, like if it was like a fucking twitchy shooter or whatever, that stuff just kind of gets in the way, right? Like, and it's that difficult dance between the times when a shorthand and a convention is really, really, really useful as a convenience for a storyteller or for a game designer, versus if you do it too much and if you do it too uncritically, you reinforce negative stereotypes. Where do you draw the line between when is it okay and when isn't it? There isn't one. There isn't a line. It's I can't really tell you anything about like, this is how you should do it, or like, here's a good example of it working the other way around, because all the good examples of it working the other way around require that explanation. It requires the thing to take the time to go, hey, you probably have this assumption about these things. Throw out your assumption, like rethink your approach to this, right? Is that a useful answer? I don't know if it is. Ishtali, with the recent announcement of the Ambessa novel. Yeah, that happened recently. That was this last week, basically. Do you have any specific lead characters with a lot of potential you would specifically want to see the next novel focus on? What sort of styles, genres, and regions would you want to see it take? Not necessarily what you think it will be, just what you would personally like to see. Yeah, that's a good one. I sort of have the same answer that I have for Warhammer novels. It's like, you motherfuckers should be publishing romance. Like, honestly, like, truly, genuinely, just like a fucking Romeo and Juliet forbidden romance between an Ionian human and a Vastaya, who's maybe part of Zaya's rebel group or whatever, or a member of the Order of Shadows and the Kinku, like two like apprentices who fall, like, fucking just do romance novels in various places. Like, girl falls in love with a fucking what are they called? Kilash? The Rengar Vastaya people. Like, do some fucking monster fucker romance. Like, romance is an incredibly broad, useful, interesting genre that gets deprioritized a lot because it's associated with women, because they are the biggest readers of the thing. But it's also something that, like, all of these fucking video game novelizations, all of them, like Halo novels, hello, Brian David Gilbert, like Warhammer, the League of Legends going into novelizations and things like that, they sleep on romance. I think even like the Star Wars novels sleep on romance. The Star Trek novels sleep on romance. I think maybe Star Trek does a better job at it, though. Probably. They sleep on the genre, and they don't use it effectively, like, although they could, not only to draw in new audiences, but also to explore parts of their worlds that are more difficult to explore if all you're doing is fucking Game of Thrones high court political drama, or like classic fantasy novel fare, or war stories, which is like the sort of universal constant in the Warhammer universe, is that it's war stories, which, like, fair enough, it's Warhammer. Of course, there's a lot of war stories, but maybe also could be other things in there. And I do know that Warhammer has been expanding in terms of the genres that they're working with. Like, they're building into things that have a little bit more of a comedy bent, things that I think someone mentioned that they were doing like detective noir style shit, which, like, the Inquisitor, like the Inquisitors are like natural fits for that sort of thing. And really, that's my thing with League of Legends. Like, League of Legends and novels is also Riot has not shown a lot of interest in actually publishing these fucking things. Really. Riot, like, I remember when the Ruination novel, like, Garen First Shield, which was actually fairly decent, right? Came out, and it got nothing. No push whatsoever. Like, Riot were like, yeah, fine, we'll publish it. And then no push, no advertising, nothing to tie in with it, like no skins in the video game, no events, no nothing. Like, it's just, yeah, it's there, you can buy it at Amazon, fuck off, right? Like, that was essentially the attitude that we got from Riot in terms of pushing it as a product. Kind of the same thing with the Ruination novel. It got a bigger push, like they put more behind it because, like, one of the writer who was working on it does have, I believe, some pull internally as a very veteran writer. But, like, did you see any ads for the Ruination novel after it came out? Have you seen Riot advertising the thing or trying to push it as a means of people to engage with the universe of League of Legends? No, you haven't, because Riot just does not seem to give a shit about trying to publish this kind of thing. And, like, I fear that the Ambessa novel, like, depends, because part of the reason probably why Riot didn't want to publish novels is that they have been, and they have, for a very long time, they have always had this problem internally at Riot that lore and story is not a priority, right? Like, relative to all of the other things that happen in League of Legends development, lore and story are not a priority. It's not something Riot really cares about. They care about making skins first and foremost. They care about balance. They care about esports. They care about, but lore, narrative, all of that stuff, that has always been the bottom of the pile. They have always been, like, the department that gets the least actual creative control over the company's direction, right? And that's just the way Riot is put together. Arcane did change some of that. For better and worse, changed that. It certainly changed in the sense that the entertainment division, I believe it was, who had been responsible for shepherding Arcane, were eventually Riot restructured and gave complete control over the lore department, over story, over narrative, over all of it was given to, like, the division that handled Arcane. I think it was entertainment, is what they were called. And that was a huge internal restructuring. A lot of writers got fired. A lot of writers got pushed out. A lot of writers were quite heartbroken at having all of the stuff that they were working on, all their projects, all the things they were doing, just kind of dropped on the floor and said, fuck you, stop working. New guys are in charge, and we're going to restructure everything so that they can do whatever the fuck they want, because everything now revolves around this one successful, mainstream successful entertainment product we've got, which is Arcane, right? And the Ambessa novel seems to be sort of a tale of that, in the sense that, okay, everything's about Arcane now, so if we're going to try and do novels, we're going to do a novel about a character from the wildly successful hit TV show Arcane that we have, and sort of try and center that. And, I don't know, like, again, ever since the Ambessa novel came out, I don't feel like, again, I have not engaged very deeply with League of Legends for a while now, I don't really feel like Riot has been heavily pushing it as, like, oh, the novel based on the Arcane thing. Like, I haven't seen ads for it really that much. I haven't seen them push it. Like, I go to bookstores. I've never seen it there, right? I do live in Scandinavia. Maybe it's different in the US, but it doesn't feel like Riot are really pushing on it with any kind of real commitment, certainly not relative to how much they're pushing on Arcane. So I just don't trust that Riot gives that much of a shit about publishing novels. It's like, it's something they really ought to do. Like, they really ought to take a fucking clue from Games Workshop, which has been very, very, very successful at using novels to, like, deepen the engagement of their audience with their universe. But they just don't want to. And, like, also, again, because they have never really had a solid plan for the direction of League of Legends story or lore, right? Like, Arcane was originally not supposed to be canon, right? Like, it was not supposed to be a canon story. It was supposed to be a kind of what-if alternate universe version of the story of Jinx and Vi and Piltover and so on. But then Riot was like, oh, Arcane is the most successful thing ever. Okay, cool, we're pivoting everything around that. So now that's the center of the canon, and everything else has to be rewritten to fit it. It's like, how the fuck do you write a novel set in that shit when Riot themselves don't know what they want to do with the world and kind of pivot on a dime to whatever the fuck happens to be the most successful thing recently? So I don't know how the fuck a writer would even try to navigate that either, quite frankly. But yeah. Anyway, what was the question? Purple Ivy, how do you avoid comparing yourself to others in the same field as you, whether that be character analysis or design critiques or just as YouTube as a whole? I don't. Well, I do. I try. Mostly I avoid it by reminding myself that it's useless, right? Everyone who has any kind of success doing the kind of shit that I do got lucky. And that includes me. We also, all of us, put in astounding amounts of hard work, right? Like, we all did a hell of a lot of essentially unpaid labor, like, much more than we probably really should have. And all of us got lucky, right? Like, it's skill, yes. It's talent, yes. It's tons of hard work, yes. But the thing that makes the difference between me and someone with 8,000 subscribers is luck, mostly. It's that my shit happened to hit at a moment when there was an audience that was willing to watch it, and the algorithm was willing to push it, and I got put in front of them, and I got a bunch of subscribers. Not because I'm the best, but because I happened to hit a sweet spot and an empty space in a market somewhere at a moment when it was available to be hit, right? And that's the thing I try to remind myself. If I'm comparing myself to anyone else, there's a couple of creators I look at who are like having meteoric rises, and they're doing sort of the same kind of thing that I am, and I am feeling like, oh fucking hell, like they're doing so well, they're finding so much success. How the fuck do they have the stamina to make so many fucking videos relative to me? And it's easy to feel bad about that. But then the other thing is like, yeah, and also there's another 100 people who are like them and who are better than them, probably at a lot of things, who might be, as it were, meritocratically more deserving, but who are getting jack fucking shit because, for whatever reason, their shit just hasn't hit yet, right? And that makes me feel better quite a bit, honestly, to know that, like, if someone else is having a lot of success doing the same kind of thing that I do, that's not really a reflection on me. Because I'm not in control of who gets to be successful at this shit. No one is. Well, YouTube is, kind of. But even YouTube, their algorithm is a fucking black box. They don't know quite how it works. But we are at the mercy of structural forces that are entirely beyond us. And so I can't really sit here and say, my success, the success that I have, that's 100% a reflection of my worth as a human being. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. It's a reflection of a lot of hard work that I did, and then I got lucky, right? And it's the same for everybody else. So, in that sense, I avoid the comparison by just reminding myself that the comparison is not meaningful. It's not meaningful. There is nothing to compare, because it is a series of unreplicatable circumstances and luck that makes for most of this, right? So there's no, like, oh, this creator is better than me, worse than me, because they have more subscribers or get more views or whatever. No, there is no comparison to make. There's no information, there's no data to be harvested from that analysis. One thing, like, on sort of the other side of the scale, there are at least a few creators that I know have seen on YouTube Shorts that seem to have been inspired by my formats for videos and for analysis and things like that. Like, some videos that, oh boy, you sure are using a very similar font in a text box positioned in the same place on the screen with your logo and your subscribe thing in the same position and same style of cutting between, like, oh, that's very similar to the way I do League of Legends skin reviews. My. And I don't care. Like, I do care. I find it flattering. I find it very funny. I find it very tickling that apparently I have managed to sort of stumble my way into a position of any kind of influence, creative, artistic influence on other people, mostly because the format I use for shorts is really easy. Intentionally so. I made it really easy so that I could make a lot of shorts really quickly, because I figured that's basically the thing with shorts and short form video is, like, you have to make a lot of stuff quickly. You have to post every day. That's the main thing. Again, doesn't matter if you make the best short in the entire universe that anyone has ever seen. If you only make one of those a month, the systems, the algorithms, the For You pages, they just don't give a shit, and they won't push them, and you won't get an audience, right? Whereas if you make a bunch of perfectly decent videos and you can make enough of them that you can post one every single day, that'll do a lot better for you. So, like, no wonder my format got copied, or inspired people, like, to sort of use that as a takeoff point to do their own thing. And I don't mind it. I don't think it's a bad thing. Sometimes I've gotten a few messages from people like, oh, this person is copying you, they're ripping you off, and I go and look at it and it's just like, no, they're not ripping me off. They're not saying the same things. They're not repeating my points or copying my analysis. They're just doing a similar visual presentation format, and that's not ripping me off. That's just using a format, right? But it does tickle me. Like, that makes me happy that I've stumbled upon something that is useful enough that people would want to go and imitate it. So that I'm quite pleased with. When you watch other creators, do you find yourself critiquing their work, such as the editing or writing of the video? That yes, I do, and it's a curse. It is a curse. It is a curse. It's horrible. I can't turn it off. I can't stop doing it. And I try to keep my mouth the fuck shut about it. I have this thing inside of I have a video planned. I want to do a critique of the visual style of overly sarcastic production videos, because I think I have something useful to say there. I think I can frame my critique in a way that's actually useful. But on the other hand, it's like, do they need it? Just like it's that thing of, it's the Craig Ferguson thing, right? Craig Ferguson has this bit, was like, before you say anything, ask yourself these 3 questions. Does this need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? And does it need to be said by me now? And if the answer to any of those questions is no, shut the fuck up, right? Which is a good rule, especially as a content creator, of this thing of like, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said by me now? And it's like, I'm struggling even to justify whether it needs to be said, right? Like there are things maybe in the critique I have of overly sarcastic productions, visual production of their videos. There are things in there that, like, probably valuable enough that they do need to be said. Do they need to be said by me is the other question, right? Like, and that's another thing, is like, that's difficult to say that it should be me specifically. We don't really work in the same field. I guess I am a much smaller creator, and it's probably better that a smaller creator makes these critiques rather than a big one trying to sort of dunk on them, although they're big enough that there's probably no one who could dunk on them as such. And then there's the thing, does it need to be done by me now? Does it need to be now? Is that important? Well, probably not, right? But it sort of boils within me. Like, there are multiple YouTubers who I watch, whose videos I love, like, who I think they're very, very good, and I admire them, and I watch everything that they do. And also, maybe that paragraph could have been edited down. You didn't need to do that whole thing in that voice. Like, oh, you've repeated that affect trick 9 times in the video now, Super Eye Patch Wolf. Maybe you don't have to do it a 10th time. Like, I have these little things, and a lot of them are just petty. A lot of them are just, like, preferences or things that is, like, just personally. But is it useful? Is it useful for me to say it? Usually not. No. It doesn't. I don't think it helps anyone necessarily, and so I shut the fuck up about it, right? But in my head, no, yeah, like, it's running, it's on the whole time. Like, I've so many times during watching a video, I say, I'm like, cut to different footage now, cut to something different, please cut to something okay, there we go, right? Because something stays on the screen for too long, or it's not interacting correctly, I think, with like the point that's being made. Or sometimes it's like, oh boy, you sure are relying a lot on B-roll that doesn't actually reflect or inform any of the things that you're saying with your words. Was there maybe something else you could put on screen that would work better? And I try to take those criticisms and pack them away, and then when I'm making my own videos, I try to go, okay, you had all this criticism of the way that person did things. Now let's remember what we were critical about with them, and then we try and do better ourselves. Like, we try and make the criticism work for us in some way. But no, yeah, like, absolutely, 100%. That's in my head all the time. Cyanide Valentine, why do you think big media companies fall so often into the same generalizations and national fantasies when they depict non-American people? Overwatch 3's Japanese ninjas, for example. Well, that kind of goes back to the question about, like, skinny and fat characters a little bit. Because it's shorthand. Like, that, partly it's shorthand, right? Like, it's when you want a international audience or an American audience to understand, oh, Japan, what kind of general knowledge do you have to draw upon that you can assume that a majority of the audience will intuitively understand? Well, one of the things is fucking ninjas, right? Japan, oh, ninjas, samurai, katana swords, anime, Yakuza. Occasionally people know about the Yakuza. But anything that's more specific, anything that's more actual, sort of authentic to the broad diversity of Japanese life, well, the more specific and the more authentic you get, the fewer people will understand. The less people will intuitively be able to comprehend the thing, right? And the fundamental reason, right? Like, the fundamental reason why big media companies so often produce less interesting work than they ought to with all the fucking money they have is the risk aversion. They are companies that are playing around with budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And that those hundreds of millions of dollars don't come from people who give a shit about art, who give a shit about creativity, who give a shit about anything, really. Those hundreds of millions of dollars come from people who care about money and only money and nothing else except money, and money is the only argument that they will accept and the only thing that matters to them, right? And so in order for those people to ensure that they get the maximum possible return on their investment, they will put what's called stakeholders in place, right? Like they will insist that some people who represent their interests specifically are given creative control over the process. And that creative control is usually make sure that whatever is being produced has the highest likelihood possible of returning as much money as possible, which means taking risks is a big no-no. We don't like taking risks because risk means, yes, you could succeed big, but it also means you could fail. And we don't like failure. We don't like even the potential possibility of losing money. We want to make money, only money, all of the money forever, as much money as humanly possible. That's the only thing we want. So instead of making something specific and authentic that is like based in reality or like really tries to speak to something that's thematically interesting or challenging to a dominant culture or whatever, it's more about like, okay, if we want to do a Japanese character. Okay, what kind of Japanese thing is popular? Well, ninjas are popular. Do a ninja. Ninjas are popular. We've got the data right here. We're a data-driven company, and we have data right here from user surveys that say that people like ninjas. So put a ninja in the thing because people like ninjas and they'll pay money for ninjas. And that's good because then we maximize profit, right? Like that's the fundamental reason, is that as budgets increase and as more and more money men come into the process, creative risk-taking structurally becomes disadvantaged. It becomes less and less and less possible to take creative risk because there's more and more and more pressure to return on investment, right? And the people who are like laying out the capital holders, the capitalists, will demand more and more and more control over the product to ensure an optimized return on investment. That's the fundamental thing, right? So something like Overwatch, and their Japanese characters are ninjas and samurai, primarily, that's why. It's because what's popular, what sells, ninjas and samurai. So when someone who works on Overwatch, if they try and pitch something that's more specific, that's less safe, that is like more creative, more interesting, more authentic, they get shot down because the audience statistics that we're gathering about the stuff that the audience likes say that, oh yeah, that very specific authentic shit, yeah, that's less popular than this very broadly appealing general shit. So more ninjas it is, more samurai it is, right? That's the constant push and pull, right? Like where the artists try and push the envelope like however the fuck they can, and the money men and the bean counters constantly attempt to shut them down in the attempt to secure more money. And the end result of a very long process like that, like a very beautiful example of where that kind of process leads, I'm willing to take a bet and say Concord. Like why did Concord turn out the way it did? That's why. Like that process, that aversion to risk taking, that's fucking why Concord turned out the way that it did. Nightly Night. Oh boy, this is a long one. I remember watching people talk about couples character design. Basically, two characters that are or will be a couple and spend a lot of time cuddling, kissing, etc. They should be designed to match or contrast each other visually, and if they're not designed with each other in mind, that could result in their designs clashing in intimate scenes and looking weird. So I was curious if you have any thoughts about this approach to designing certain characters. Do you think it's more interesting when characters are designed on their own first, or can this approach offer more visually dynamic results? Some examples that come to my mind are Zaya Rakan, Moxie Millie, even Set and Aphelios. Part of why they were shipped was their opposite aesthetics. Again, contextual, right? In fact, the example that will come to mind for me would be Steven Universe and Garnet, right? Like Sapphire and Ruby, the two constituent characters of Garnet in that show. Because that show, like, very, very much works on that thing of, like, in order to represent the relationship between two characters, you get these fusion characters. That's where you get Stevani. That's where you get Onyx. That's where you get, like, these different fusion characters who are made up of, like, a combination of these characters that are fusing themselves together. And it is an approach to character design, but like it's contextual, right? In a cartoon like Hell of a Boss, in a cartoon like Steven Universe, in a video game like League of Legends, right? The principle is pretty true that, like, yeah, if you're going to have characters where thematically narratively it's important that they are a couple with one another. Zaya and Rakan, their whole thing is that they're a couple. Their whole thing is that they're birds of paradise kind of thing, with like the big sort of peacocky male and the much more sort of dour, downbeat female character. And I've had my criticisms of them that I feel like they could probably have pushed that a lot further and made it a lot more interesting, but corporate risk-taking, right? When you're working with something like League of Legends or something like a Steven Universe cartoon or things like that, the readability of those designs, being able to look at them and read from just looking at them, okay, these things have a complementary or contrasting relationship to each other, and you're meant to understand them as like connected to one another in a sense, right? That can be very useful shorthand. Same thing goes for rival characters. Like think of Sonic and Shadow, for example, right? Like where there's a lot of complementary characteristics between them. They are both hedgehogs within the Sonic the Hedgehog style, and then there's a lot of contrast, right? Like Sonic's quills sort of curve downwards, Shadow's they sort of go down and they point upwards. Black and red versus like blue and white, and like the blue and yellow more specifically. Like all of these things that are where Shadow was clearly designed specifically for the purposes of contrasting Sonic, because he is an evil Sonic clone, kind of, sort of, not really, but you know, like that's the archetype that he embodies, right? So for things like that, yes, absolutely, you want to design couples characters to look in a way that like works together and complement each other. It's a little bit different if you're doing a social realistic drama, right? If you're doing like a historical fiction film about actual real people that existed, if you are doing even just like a soap opera, right? The concerns and the necessities of what a character design is supposed to do are very different from between medias and genres, right? So you don't necessarily, like, if you're doing like a very realistic drama, you don't necessarily want a character to walk on screen and everyone in the audience immediately goes, oh, okay, they're the partner of that one. We can see from just the way that this person is dressed and the way that they are designed as a character, or as they are, not even in air quotes, the way that they are designed as a character. Oh, okay, that's that one's girlfriend, right? Like, that's that one's partner, that's that one's wife, that's that one's husband, that's that one's whatever, right? You don't necessarily want that, because that would introduce a level of artificiality to the story, because in real life people don't really tend to do that, right? Like in real life you don't get people who are color coordinated the way that Sapphire and Ruby are. It's much rarer in that sense, right? Like, and it can introduce a alienation from reality and a lack of realism. It can cause problems with suspension of disbelief, right? So it's contextual to the genre. In League of Legends, Zaya and Rakan need to look the way that they do because, like, they are so much designed around being these complementary, contrasting opposites, right? That they're like opposites that are attracted to one another. Like, Rakan, big, loud, flamboyant; Zaya, dark, brooding, sort of recalcitrant. Like, all of that shit is incredibly important to communicate with visual information immediately in a way that it just isn't in other genres, right? So, again, it is very, very contextual. It depends on what you want the fact of their relationship to do as a part of the storytelling, right? Because in a socially realistic drama, if you do want to design characters so like they fit together as a couple, then there does need to be a purpose to that, right? It can't just be, oh, so that the audience can immediately visually read that these two go together. At that point, you're more like, okay, these people have ended up looking in a certain way relative to each other, and that reflects something about their internal psychological state. That reflects the way that they see their relationship, right? Like, that reflects the influence that they have on each other. This is like a reflection of something more grounded and realistic in them. Why would a real person in real life actually dress in such a way as to reflect or complement their partner? What does that say about their state of mind? Like, does that say maybe, oh, the partner is really controlling and is forcing the other person to adopt an aesthetic that, like, fits them, but maybe they're not quite comfortable in that? Or is it a thing of these two lesbians just shop at the same stores all the time and they don't have a lot of money, so they share a lot of clothes, and so they end up with wardrobes that look really similar to one another just out of, like, that's just kind of how their life be, right? But you have to think about it in a different way. Like, the information that you're trying to communicate has to operate on a different level depending on the genre and the medium that you're working within. What are your thoughts about Harada's statements here about sending companies fan designs and such? TLDR, sending or posting fan designs will more than likely make the company avoid elements of your design so as to avoid lawsuits. Therefore, he's asking people to stop sending them to him and other companies. Yeah. This is not a specific thing to Harada. This is just standard industry practice when it comes to IP management anywhere, is if, let's say you make a piece of fan art of a character from a show that perfectly predicts a plot twist that's going to happen in season 2, right? We're like, oh, this character has an eye patch now, and you happen to just randomly predict that this character will have an eye patch in season 2, even though that's not been confirmed or said anywhere, and you do that like 2 months before season 2 is even announced. And now your piece of fan art is out there, having this detail in it, and if you can prove that the creators of the show saw your fan art, then you could theoretically have probable cause to bring a lawsuit for copyright infringement, because you can prove that you came up with the idea first. You can prove that they saw it, they interacted with it, they retweeted it, they reposted it, they said, oh, that's really cool. You can prove that. And at that point, you have introduced the possibility that, oh, wait, shit, did the thing that I made, did they just copy that shit? Did they come up with that independently? How would they prove that they came up with that independently, right? And usually big corporations tend to win those kinds of lawsuits because they are big corporations. They can afford very good lawyers, and most other people can't. But it's a lot of fucking legal liability to run into. This idea of like, oh, the writer of this book spends like a couple of hours a week reading fan fiction on AO3 about their own work, and oh, hey, this plot point in their next novel in the series seems really, really similar to this plot point in a very popular fanfic about their universe. Did they steal it there? Right? And it can just be that the fanfic writer picked up on a bunch of tropes and a bunch of foreshadowing that was happening in the first book and extrapolated from that in exactly the same way that the writer themselves were about to do in their sequel follow-up. But how do you prove that? Like, that uncertainty, all of that difficulty. It's all downsides and no upside, right? Like, why would you invite that? Why would you want to have to deal with that as a company or even as an individual creator? Why would you even want to invite that, right? So the bigger something is, like, the bigger the IP, the more expensive, the more money there's in it, the more popular, the more influential it is, the more a creator or creative team or a company will generally seek to distance themselves from engaging with fan works if they can at all help it, because it introduces that element of risk. It introduces that element of liability, right? Where, what if independently the original creator and the fan artist came up with a similar idea, but the fan artist did it first? What if? And if that shit goes to court, and if it goes wrong, if it goes bad, if the fan artist is given the court's assent that, like, no, yeah, this is their idea, and the company did copy it, just the losses and the difficulty and the fucking... And not to mention the effect that can have on a community, right? Like, if the community feels, oh shit, this company is taking the work of fan artists, repackaging it, and selling it to us without even giving them credit, that's horrible, right? Like, that can absolutely destroy a community. That can destroy a fan community. That can destroy the reputation of a product, right? It's all downsides. It's all downsides. The upside is you get to see cool fan art. The downsides are everything could go horribly fucking wrong and you can get stuck in lawsuits and court cases for decades. So they don't want it. Like, authors who know what's good for them stay the fuck away from fan fiction, right? Writers and artists who know what the fuck is good for them are very careful about how they engage with fan works and fan fiction. And the more popular and the more profitable it could potentially be to sue you for copyright infringement, the more the risk compounds, right? So some shit from Harada working on Tekken, staying away from fan fiction, like, no surprise there. He doesn't want that smoke. No one wants that smoke. And, like, nobody who's in this position, they don't want to be taken to court by their own fans. And they don't want to have to go to court against their own fans. It's an unpleasant experience that no human being wants. So that's just normal. And it's reasonable, and it's one of the reasons why you should not, under any circumstances, send the fanfiction that you wrote of something to the original author of the book that you wrote fanfiction about. Just don't do it, right? Like, I know it's tempting. I know it's something like I really want to show it off, or I want to get a comment, and it would make my day if I could just get like a response from my favorite author in the world. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like, because oftentimes they just can't. They cannot acknowledge that you have done this in any way. They can't do it because there's so much risk and so much peril associated with doing that. And it sucks, right? Like, it means there's that level of artificiality. There's that wall that you have to build between creator and audience that can't be breached. And it sucks. Like, it feels inauthentic from a creator's perspective as well, but it's better than the alternative. Like, in the world where copyright rules the roost when it comes to creativity, you don't want to deal with that. So that's pretty normal. What are your thoughts on Sekiro? I vaguely remember seeing you playing a long time ago, but I can't remember when or find the video. Do you intend on ever covering it? It's a stream on the main channel ages ago. Back when Sekiro first came out, I got contacted by, I think it was Bandai Namco that published that one. I can't remember. But the publisher contacted me, gave me an early review code. I was able to do some pre-release content around, like, do a stream, basically. And I was sort of weighing Sekiro, trying to figure out, like, okay, is this a game I could make videos about? And the conclusion that I sort of come to over time is probably not. Sekiro is very, very deeply based in, like, Buddhism and Japanese culture and Shinto and, like, a lot of cultural information that I just don't know as much about that as I do about the inspirations that lay behind something like Dark Souls, right? I just don't have that level of cultural competence. I would have to do a lot of fucking research. A lot. And even if I do, I'm not sure if I could make good videos. Like, I just don't have the feeling in my chest that, like, if I make videos about this, I can say something good, I can say something interesting, I can do something cool with it. I'm not sure I do. So I'll play Sekiro someday, like, probably as a Let's Play over on the Let's Play channel. I might make some shorts about some of the characters at some point, but boss designs of Sekiro, probably never going to happen. Because I don't think I have the necessary skills, at least not at the moment, to make that series good. Cyrex, you've made comments in the past about how the old League of Legends lore with the summoners more or less doesn't work for actual narrative, but was honestly what made League of Legends appealing to me back in the day, and is what pulled me into the characters in the world. Do you believe that a plot setup like that literally can't work, or is it simply the League of Legends used it poorly? More the second part than the first thing. Really, it's not that the plot setup can't work, but it couldn't work for what League of Legends, for what Riot wanted to do with League of Legends, right? For those who don't know, the original olden times release plot of League of Legends was that there is a actual in-game universe tournament called the League of Legends, and it's basically what the city-states in Runeterra do instead of waging war, right? Like, instead of going to war with Noxus, Demacia will be like, oh, we have a political dispute with you. We'll send our champion to the League of Legends, and they will fight your champion in the League of Legends, and whoever wins will be able to, like, will have the League of Legends itself, like the institution, like essentially the UN of that world will then adjudicate the case in our favor. So we will gain territory, or we will have prisoners of war returned to us, or like whatever the dispute is, it gets solved on the rift in League of Legends, right? That's not at all a bad setup for a story. You can do a lot of interesting shit with that, and Riot kind of almost sort of tried in the early days to maybe do something with it. But it's also a setup that only allows for, like, the only characters you can put in the League of Legends are characters that would plausibly have a reason to be in the League of Legends, right? Have a reason to be on the Rift fighting for the political interests of the city-states and countries and peoples of Runeterra. So how do you get Bard in there? How the fuck do you get Aurelian Soul in there? How do you even manage to hold the power scale of any of this remotely reasonable, right? And in the very early days, League of Legends didn't fucking try. Like, in the very, very early days, League of Legends was basically a Smash Bros sort of situation, where it's just like, oh yeah, here's an angel and a devil from the Christian mythology, and here's Anubis from Egyptian mythology, and also a turtle with spikes, and a little hamster who goes invisible and throws mushrooms, and sorcerer magic man rise with runes on him, and a minotaur, and Cho'Gath, and also a girl who plays instrument. Right, like, in the early days, League of Legends didn't give a shit, but the more they started to give a shit about trying to parse all of this out as a coherent world, the less the setting became useful for it, right? So in 2014, they said, okay, we're just getting rid of the League of Legends, right? Like, we're getting rid of League of Legends as a part of the canon and saying that's essentially, that is like making it even more like Super Smash Brothers in the way that Super Smash Brothers doesn't exist in the Mario universe or the Zelda universe. Like, Link has not canonically gone to go to play in the Smash Bros tournament, but he shows up there as a sort of alternate universe incarnation of him or whatever, right? That's sort of the same situation that the League of Legends is. Everything that happens on the Rift is non-canon. It's nonsense. It's not actually the stories, and then we'll tell the stories about the characters separately, right? And that's just the only way to do what they wanted to do with League of Legends and League of Legends characters. That's the only way to have Aurelion Sol, right? It's the only way to do it. Because so long as you are tied at the hip to the concept of the League of Legends and the concept that the purpose of the League of Legends is to adjudicate political disputes between fantasy city-states, there are so many... You can't tell Arcane, right? You can't do Arcane when you're tied to the League of Legends, right? So it's like, it's a matter of, like, League of Legends never tried to use the premise properly for what it was for. Their ambition in terms of the characters that they wanted to make outgrew what their setting could support. And that's using the setting poorly, right? Like, that doesn't mean the setting is inherently a bad idea. It just means Riot Games were not interested in using that setting for what it's good for, right? Because they wanted to make Aurelion Sol, they wanted to make Bard, they wanted to make more and more fantastical video game characters to sell skins for, right? So yeah. Nightly Night, I've been watching your Bloodborne boss videos, and I want to know, it's going to be a while until you get to Dark Souls 3. What have you seen or heard about it? Do you have any expectations or things you're curious about? Anything that worries you? The prevailing wisdom with Dark Souls 3, right, is that Dark Souls 1 is that initial masterpiece, and then Dark Souls 2 is the shitty one that's bad, and then Dark Souls 3 is like the return to form, right? Like, oh, we're returning to the glory of the first game, and like we're rejecting the whatever the stupid bullshit was the second game did, and then now this is the one that's good, that's the follow-up to the first one. And so my worry is that Dark Souls 3 is gonna be, oh, you didn't like Dark Souls 2? Okay, we'll just do Dark Souls 1 again, but with better graphics, right? We'll just do all the plot, all the themes, all the ideas, all of the world building, we'll just do Dark Souls 1 again, because that's what the fans want. Because the fans hated it when we tried to do something new and interesting and unique and distinct, so we'll just do Dark Souls 1 again. That's my worry, right? Like, I don't think that that's true, probably, but that would be my worry, because that's what the sort of narrative surrounding these games kind of suggests to me might be the case. And certainly Dark Souls 3 is much more directly a continuation of the story of Dark Souls 1, right? This I know. And I also know that Gwendolyn got eaten by someone. I can't remember the name of him, but that's something that's been spoiled for me in many comments on my Gwendolyn short on YouTube, because that went kind of, not viral, but it has like over 1 million views at this point. So a lot of people just spoiled that shit in the comments for me. And there's little things like that I've heard, right? Like, there's little spoilers, little things around the internet, names that I've seen floating around, like people just discussing the game because it's old and like nobody has a responsibility to mark their spoilers anymore. So there's little things I know, there's little things I've heard, there's little things I've seen, but I really haven't seen enough to have that many preconceived notions. I have the worry that it's a game that sort of goes, okay, fine, the fans don't like anything new, we'll just do the old shit again. That's my worry, but I don't think that's what's going to be happening. I'm just interested. I'm curious. I'm very curious if we're returning to Lordran, if we're returning to Gwyn and the first fire and the linking of the flame and all of that shit. Okay, what does that mean then after the conclusion of the first game? Because Dark Souls 2, I think, made the very smart decision not to go back to Lordran, but to take a similar approach to theme and storytelling and tell a very different story with it, a story much more about personal identity and like what is it that makes a person who they are, like what is the source of humanity, what is the source of a person, and how can a person be unmade. Whereas Dark Souls 1 is much more about this mythic cycle of like flame and like, does it make sense to keep trying to reach for a golden magnificent past, or do you face the terror of walking into the dark and maybe something new might be waiting for you there, right? Like, or is the Age of Dark like a regression? Is that giving up on the world? Is that giving up on the idea of making a better world by light and fire even though the world's nature may be dark, as human beings, we can make something. Like, Dark Souls 1 is much more on that level. It's much more that very broad existential question about, like, what is the nature of the world? What is the nature of, like, building a reality? Whereas Dark Souls 2 is much more insular and personal and looking inward. And I kind of hope that Dark Souls 3 isn't just doing Dark Souls 1 again, because we already got Dark Souls 1, and it was pretty good. And we probably don't need to do it again, because even if you do it better, you're just still just kind of doing the same thing again, and that's less interesting to me. Let's see, Jabai. I'm an artist who's been trying to apply some of the lessons in character design I've learned for your channel, but I've been struggling when it comes to figuring out if the design effectively tells the story. Is there a specific process you follow for that, like breaking down each element of the design and asking what each represents and if it fits, or is it more just vibes? Any help is much appreciated. I hope to be as skilled as you are in it someday. I mean, you ask your peers, is kind of the thing of, this is a skill in and of itself for anyone who does anything creative. Learning to ask for and receive feedback is a skill, and it's a difficult skill. It's not something that comes naturally to people. It's not something everyone just knows how to do. Not everyone knows how to give a good critique, and not everyone knows how to receive critique either. That's one of the things that can be valuable about going to art school or attending like formal art education, is that often, certainly if the teacher is any good, you will have these processes of group feedback and group critique where you learn how to ask for actionable feedback, ask good questions that help you achieve your goals, and you learn to receive that information, right? And the skill of receiving is incredibly important as well, because when someone critiques your work, you don't have to take everything they say and go, oh shit, they're probably right about that. Like, all of that is just true, right? You don't have to. One of the very important skills you have to have as an artist is knowing what critique to reject and say, okay, that's a critique that person has. Fair enough, fine, I acknowledge that that's their viewpoint, but they're wrong. I have a vision, and that vision is gonna fucking work, and all that, like, what I have learned from this person rejecting my vision is that I haven't made it good enough yet. Like, I haven't found the expression yet where people will get it. So I have to recommit and go even harder in the paint for the things that I believe in. Sometimes that's how you receive a critique, is to say, okay, fair point, you are wrong about everything, and I'm going to prove you wrong just to spite you. That can sometimes be a good way to receive a critique, right? Learning to do that, learning to have that ability to parse and receive and not internalize it as a judgment on your personal worth. Oh, hello, cats. They're playing. That's a difficult skill. But the answer to your question is ask your peers. And that's... It sucks that I have to tell you, like, oh, get friends. You don't have to get friends, but you have to get peers. You have to get people who do the kind of stuff that you do, and then you have to learn how to ask them for feedback that you will find useful in pursuing your goals. And you have to learn how to receive that feedback. You have to learn how to get information out of the feedback that you get, right? And you asked for feedback from me as a Patreon reward thing. Where I tried to help you with some of the goals with your character, right? Like, and that's the kind of feedback process that you have to look for, people who can provide that for you. Because if you just put something in front of someone and say, what do you think? Usually you don't get useful answers. Outside of, like, someone will say, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I like it. Right? Like, you get sort of yes and no answers. You get very vague answers. Whereas, if you take a character design and put it in front of someone and you go, do you think that guy is socially awkward? Right? When you see this guy, does that feel like someone who has a lot of tragedy in their past? Right? Like, whatever the goal is that you want to achieve with your character, the story that you want to tell, you have to learn to ask questions that people, when they answer them, will give you useful information about whether your design is working. Right? And that's difficult because it depends on the person you're talking to a lot. Like, I had art teachers who were not good at giving feedback at all. I had an art teacher who was very, very skilled, who was incredibly good, who had gave me some very valuable lessons, right? Like, showed me some really useful skills and techniques, but he could not give feedback for shit because his method of feedback was, I would be drawing something, I'd be doing like a gesture drawing, and he'd come over my shoulder and be like, yeah, that's wrong. And he'd just draw a gesture sketch over my sketch and like, do it more like that, right? And his sketches were always better because he was amazingly good, but also it's like, wasn't useful instruction. I just kind of had to look at what he did and try and parse for myself, like, okay, what did he do different and why? But he was not capable of really expressing it. I found the lessons that I got there very useful eventually, but it took a while to figure out how to parse the feedback that man gave, because it wasn't. He was not an intellectualizer. He did not intellectualize his process. He felt it exclusively, and you had to learn how to feel it as well in his vein, and that was difficult. And like a lot of people were very frustrated with him because they did not receive feedback in the way that he gave it at all, and like sometimes that's a personality thing, right? So I guess the questions you should ask yourself as a character designer is, what's the story I want to tell? Right? What exactly is it that I want my character to express visually? Because not everything has to be expressed visually, right? Like storytelling is like, yes, character design is one tool, but you also have dialogue, you also have acting, you also have staging, you also have cinematography, you also have genre, you also have, like, there's a million other tools you can use. So another question is like, this thing I want to express, is the character design the right tool to do that? Sometimes it's not. Most of the time, it's probably not. A lot of things are not really character design things, right? Like, are not really things that get expressed in terms of character design. So there isn't really a specific process. Like, there is an element of it's always kind of vibes, because, and also especially like, if you're not working for a corporation, if you're not working for $1 billion corporation with infinity budget that's making a huge premium product that they're putting out for many, many dollars, you also don't have to worry about it that much. Like, outside of your personal desire to excel, you don't really have to worry about it that much. Like, it is, generally speaking, more valuable that you as an artist express something which is specific and authentic to you, rather than you try to fit yourself into a mold of communication that was developed in no small part for the purposes of commercialism, right? Part of the reason why you want to have good character design in a commercial product is because communicating things more clearly at a glance to an audience is a good way to sell shit, right? So, like, there's an element of with which there's a degree to which I want to tell you, don't worry about it so much. Just make something that feels real to you and feels authentic to you, rather than worrying about whether you're doing it correctly, right? Because a lot of the rules, a lot of the tips and tricks, and a lot of the best practices that are developed for things like character design, they were developed for purposes of commercial products, right? Like, a lot of the principles and things that Disney invented were invented for the purposes of creating Disney branded products that could be sold to a Disney buying audience, right? And that's oftentimes kind of baked in to the foundational nature of it. Like, the concept of appeal in animation is an incredibly important concept. It's something that every single animator who's ever trained is taught how to work with the concept of appeal in animation, a very vague and difficult to define concept, but nonetheless a very important one. And it's a very important one because it's part of how you make the animation appealing to people so that they want to watch it, so that you can sell merchandise based on the things that are in the animation, right? Like, it's philosophically, there is a component of the Disney method of creating character design and animating which is motivated by Walt Disney's commercialism, right? Like his commercial instinct. And you can challenge that. You can reject it. You can ignore it. You can ignore all of the rules of character design if it makes you happy to make your characters a way that feels more real to you, right? So ask yourself about your objectives. Ask yourself, why is it important that this particular thing gets communicated visually through the character design? And if the answer to that is because I feel like I should do it that way, maybe reevaluate. Because there's no should. You are an artist. You're working on your own products, your own projects, rather, not products. You're doing it for yourself. Do whatever the fuck you want. That should be your first guiding star, is do whatever the fuck I want. Make something that feels good to me. And then, once you start making it for an audience, once you start wanting to appeal to an audience, once the audience becomes important, then you can ask yourself those other questions about, okay, how do we modify this raw expression of just my wants and interests? How do we modify that into a form that's perhaps more appealing to an audience that might want to watch it, right? And oftentimes what you'll find is that you have to adjust it and change it much less than you worry that you have to. because if you make something that's truly expressive of your interests and your fixations and your wants and your desires, generally speaking, it's going to turn out that the world is full of freaks just like you, who are freaky about exactly the same shit that you are, and who will get it, who will understand. So yeah, like, please don't ever come away from my work feeling like, oh, there's a way that I'm supposed to be doing this. There's a method I'm supposed to follow, because there's no such thing. It's art. It's expression. What you're supposed to do is express yourself, first and foremost. So yeah, I guess that's my answer to that. Number one, if you want that kind of feedback, you need a peer group who can give it to you and who you can provide it to in turn. Finding that can be difficult. My Discord server is generally a pretty good place. It's full of artists who keep asking each other for feedback, and they seem to be doing a pretty good job of it in the feedback channels. Places like that, find peers. Ask them actionable questions, specific questions. Tell them what you are trying to achieve, and let them provide you with ideas on how to achieve it. And you'll probably get a lot of the way there. Let's see, I don't know how much you're into media studies and academic studies on culture, etc., but have you read any interesting books and papers that helped you get a better grasp on how to approach media or how to analyze cultural phenomena? I mean, I have a bachelor's in English. The way that university tends to work in Denmark is like you really buy all of the theory books, especially for a bachelor's education. Instead, our lecturers, our teachers will find a bunch of sources, find a bunch of essays, find a bunch of stuff. They'll copy it, and then you'll get like a little custom binder of a bunch of like photocopies of articles and text and things like that, and we'll work through those in turn. I think I have my old folders of those texts around here somewhere. Where the fuck I put them though? Hang on. Somewhere in the back of my shelf. But basically, no book, no specific novel, no specific book, no specific textbook, no specific author. I got a couple of huge ass fucking red binders full of photocopied articles and essays and titles and things, and then over the course of university education, we went through them. We talked about like, how does this work? What's the theoretical framework for this? Where does this come from? What is the provenance of these ideas, and what were those ideas created in response to, and so on. So like, I can't recommend you a book. Well, maybe specifically if you want to think about character design, you might want to read Baudrillard. What the fuck's that name of that book? Baudrillard. It's... Let's see. Simulacra and Simulation is a good place to start. That one's very useful. It's a foundational text. Like, you'll get introduced to that in most theory classes about like semiotics and things like that. But it's a good place to start because he talks about a lot of the way that we use symbols and signs and signifiers to create shared meaning between us, and that stuff is kind of at the core of the concept of character design, right? And it's at the core of many things, in fact. Hang on. And that can be very helpful. Like, there's a bunch of literary analysis. Like, buying a textbook from a university bookstore that's like intro to literary criticism, intro to art criticism, intro to art history, things like that. Good starting points, but like, the nature of university is you're self-taught a lot. Like, you have to do the reading yourself. Your lecturer is just there to help you understand what you've read and process what you've read and like integrate what you've read into greater frameworks. But if you want to study this stuff, if you want to study it actually, it's like, you have to find a university that has their curriculum publicly available, find their media studies class, check out what the public curriculum is, what kinds of books and texts and things they study, maybe find some of those somewhere like maybe don't buy them if they're really, really expensive, but maybe secondhand, or maybe there's other ways to find them on the internet, probably somewhere in ways that are entirely legal. But you have to do a lot of the reading yourself. I don't have a curriculum for you. Because I went to university a good long while ago, the curriculum has probably changed. But yeah, like also media analysis is a practice. It is not just a theoretical understanding, it's a practice. If I am good at this at all, it's because I have done it a lot. I have actively sat down and go, okay, I will attempt to interpret this thing. I will attempt to understand it. I will attempt to analyze it with the tools that I have available. And then I will put that analysis out into the world, and I will be getting feedback on it, right? And that makes you better at it. That helps. That's part of building the skill set of learning how to analyze stuff, is to do the analysis and see what happens, right? That's about as close as I can get to a guide on that. Matrox DX. Hey, Sky, and happy holidays and all that jazz. Yeah, holidays. There are holidays happening right now, probably. I was curious if you had a particularly recent or memorable, heartbreaking, the worst person you know just made a great point moment that you could share with us. I don't know if it's recent, but it annoys me that Carl Schmitt was right about certain things. It annoys me. I am annoyed that he continues to be right about certain things. For those who don't know, Carl Schmitt was a Nazi. He was probably one of the intellectual founders of 20th century fascism. He was a German Nazi. A lot of his political philosophy work has been very influential up to this day. The concept of the friend-enemy distinction is something which I find to be frustratingly true, a lot more than it ought to be. It's a pattern of like, he recognized a pattern of human behavior, I think, accurately. And it's a pattern of behavior that I see replicated a lot, especially in online spaces, and I really fucking wish it wouldn't. But yeah, he's an example, a rare example of a right-wing philosopher, a very far right-wing philosopher, who I don't agree with the conclusions he drew from his observations. Like, a lot of his conclusions are like, oh no, actually, like, it's good that the state gets to define what a human being is, and the state gets to define guilt and sin as matters of, like, legal standing within the eyes of the state, and fuck you for believing the concept of any kind of higher morality, right? Like, I don't agree with his conclusions to a lot of the observations that he made, but he does his observation about the friend-enemy distinction and the way that human beings act around the friend-enemy distinction, the way that we have a tendency to behave around it. I really wish that motherfucker wasn't right about that. Right? Not in the sense of he's right about a fundamental approach to human nature, just that he correctly observed a pattern that emerges out of a lot of things in the way that the world is put together. And none of us are immune to it. Like, there's a lot of online lefties who very frequently will end up behaving very much in line with a Schmittian definition of the friend-enemy distinction. And I really fucking hate that. You've mentioned watching basically every Dropout clip. I wanted to ask if you have any analysis of any of the shows, especially D20, but also the other shows. I've never watched the D20 shows. I've never watched Critical Role. I've never really, outside of a few of the campaigns on D and Dorks, which is the channel where I've played in a few campaigns. Go watch those, by the way. They're good. I don't really, actual play is just not really something I engage with very much. I listen to podcasts. And actual plays would sort of fall into a podcast category, and I don't have any more room in my time. I don't have the time to sit down to watch a whole campaign of Dimension 20 or whatever, no matter how good Brennan is as a DM or a Bria, or no matter how funny Emily is. So I don't have any analysis on any of that. My favorite Dropout show is definitely Game Changer. The things that it has grown into from its fairly humble beginnings, the madness that it's been unleashed. The thing I really do love about Game Changer is that it is so clear that Sam Reich is not the sort of horrible little imp who's putting these comedians into these horrible... No. He is the brakes. He's the limiter. He's the guy whose job it is to make sure that these people don't get themselves into too much trouble on his behalf. Like he's a ringmaster. It's a circus. He's the ringmaster. He's the guy who tries to hold things together with both hands and keep the chaos under some level of control, and who creates these play spaces that give these freaks and weirdos, these comedians, space to be authentically fucked up weirdly themselves. And I find that very pleasant. I like the creative energy of that collaboration that exists at Dropout. That it seems so much about Sam Reich has all of this privilege, this position of like economic power and opportunity, and he seems to have elected to use it primarily to find a whole bunch of interesting, fun, creative people and make play spaces for them to play. And, find a way to monetize that and turn it into a content empire. And I really do appreciate that. Like, there's something very healing about that in many ways, especially compared to like what game shows have a tendency to be, right? Think of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? Like, think of all of the fucking reality-inflicted game shows. Think of fucking Beast Games and shit like that, right? There's an inherent, deeply mean-spirited hostility to a lot of game shows because they revel in failure. They revel in dangling huge amounts of life-changing money in front of people, specifically for the purpose of seeing the heartbreak when they fail. That's the whole animating impetus of every single talent show. X Factor, America's Next Top Model, Pop Star, fucking whatever. That's the animating, like America's Got Talent, all of that shit. The animating impetus behind those things is a truly mean-spirited, cruel adoration of failure and the elevation of singular geniuses. Like, or at least people who get thrust into the role and conceptualized as singular geniuses rising to the top on a kind of affected meritocracy, but specifically through the process of eliminating those less worthy. There's a cruelty and a hierarchy and a mean-spiritedness to a lot of game shows. And then you watch Game Changer and it's like, oh, no. Like, this is a show about, hey, I've come up with a ridiculous premise for a fun game we could all play. Here's a bunch of weirdos who will take this premise to the farthest reaches they could possibly go and go completely insane with it. I'm going to set up a safe play space for them, and then I'm just going to let them fucking go. A game show where everyone wins when it's fun. I like that. There's something healing about that. Lena Inverse, if they make Zelda playable in a future mainline Zelda game, what do you think they should do with her? On the one hand, I don't want her to just be Girl Link, but on the other, I understand that they can't just do the Echo thing again. Well, I kind of do want her to just be Girl Link, except... So, Triforce of Power, Triforce of Courage, Triforce of Wisdom, right? Courage, like, power is Ganon, which is just having power, using power, expending power, tyranny, hierarchy, all of that shit, right? That's the stuff that he stands in for. Courage is the courage to challenge those things, right? Like, to stand up against power, to be outmatched and outgunned and be, like, hideously put in the position of an underdog with no chance to win, but to stand up and say, yes, I will do it anyway. To pick up the sword, right? And go out on the quest to save the princess and set things right anyway, even though the Demon King Ganondorf is terrifying, even though he has armies of monsters at his command. Courage. Courage to act anyway, right? Fair enough. But then one of the primary gameplay loops of the Zelda franchise is puzzle solving, is figuring out puzzles and thinking your way through problems. Which, like, so what's wisdom for, exactly? Like, if we have clearly defined roles for courage and for power, what is wisdom for? Then what's wisdom for? And oftentimes in the games, what wisdom becomes expressed as is, well, Zelda's wisdom, so she's smart, she's empathy. She's nice. She has lots of empathy. Magic. She can do magic things probably. But she's she's a damsel in distress all the time, right? Like the function of wisdom is to be rescued from power, I guess, right? Where my constant, like, what I was so desperately hoping for Tears of the Kingdom was, okay, Link is gonna go back and he's gonna do all the Breath of the Wild shit that he was doing, but now also up in the sky. And then Zelda, in the past, or whatever, she's gonna be doing a bunch of wisdom shit. She's gonna be like, okay, we need Link to be able to succeed in his quest to fight back Ganon, the Demon King, in the present. So I'm gonna travel all over Hyrule, and I'm gonna set up challenges, and like, I'm gonna use my wisdom and my foresight and my thinking skills to plant all of the tools that Link is going to need in order to succeed in a way that Link can find. Like, I'm going to design the video game, right? I'm going to design the world of the land of Hyrule in such a way that Link will get access to everything he needs in order to defeat Ganon. That's what I was hoping for. And that's sort of, kind of, a little bit maybe what they do with the narrative, at least insofar as Zelda is the one who rescues the Master Sword, right? Could have done a lot more with that. Could have done a lot more with that, like where she actually gets to be active, or, God forbid, you get to play as her, and you get to solve a bunch of puzzles and set up the world in such a way that Link, in the future, can gain access to the skills and powers and abilities that he needs in order to defeat the evil guy and, like, succeed in his quest. And that's kind of what I would want from a playable Zelda, is, like, either just a fucking game focused on puzzle solving, right? Like, I didn't mind the echo thing. I didn't mind that the expression of wisdom there is that Zelda is not really the one who fights as such, but she's the one who knows, like, okay, here's that enemy. I can conjure an echo of another enemy that can counter that can deal with that, right? I can use these echoes to solve puzzles. I can manipulate the environment. I can think my way through problems. That's fine by me. Like, I don't mind that, right? Like, I don't think she needs to have a sword as such. Be cool. I'd like it. I certainly wouldn't mind it, but that's not really the thing. I don't need her to be Girl Link, but I do need her to be Girl Link insofar as she's an active agent using what her portion of the Triforce means to be an active agent, right? This is something I've talked about. Age of Calamity is still the best story ever told about Zelda. Not the best Zelda game, because it's Muso. They're always kind of intensely, addictively, enjoyably mid. But is the best story ever told about her, because she gets to have agency. And I've ranted about this before, but in Age of Calamity, Zelda's insistence on exploring ancient technology is the thing that ultimately allows her to undo fate, right? She is, like, fate has decreed that the Kingdom of Hyrule must fall, that Link must be put into a 100-year stasis, and that the fated princess of the goddess with the power and all of that must be using her power to hold Ganon back, and so on. Like, that's all fated to happen, right? Like, that's all destiny. That's all that constant reincarnation cycle bullshit. That's the constant reoccurring fate of Hyrule, and nothing can be done to change that. Like, Zelda in Breath of the Wild is constantly struggling against the fact that this is her fate, and she doesn't want it to be her fate. She wants to be more and other things than just magic special goddess princess girl, right? Like, she wants to have something to contribute beyond just the circumstances of what she was born as. And Age of Calamity lets her do that. It lets her, like, she and her wisdom and her dedication to thinking things through, and by authentically being who she is able to change fate, right? She's able to undo the fate that the gods had in mind for her. That's a fantastic application of her wisdom, right? So I would want, like, I would really like it if they literally did that. A game where Zelda handles the puzzles, Link handles the platforming and, like, the adventuring and the enemy fighting and, like, all of the courage shit. And Zelda handles the puzzles. Zelda does the thinking. Zelda does, like, is the one who figures out not just how to beat Ganon, but by what means, right? Like, not just like, oh, we need the Master Sword and we need big power and we need whatever, but she's the one who figures out that the method by which Ganon's plan may be undone. She's the one who, like, and expressing that actively through gameplay, probably puzzle solving, right? Like, probably that the puzzles are her area of expertise, that those are the things that she does, right? Just within the scope of what the Zelda franchise is, right? That's what I would like. Local, how do you manage productivity working from home? No, no, I don't. No, next question. I don't. I mean, in fairness, like, I used to work at my computer in my bedroom because I only had my bedroom. I was in a 2-room apartment. The other room was occupied by my roommate. So I only had bed and computer, pretty much, right? Like, that was the extent of what I had in my room, right? And that was bad for me because it meant like get up, sit at the computer, lay down, think about computer, get up, sit at like there was no separation, there was no distinction between when I was at work, working, doing stuff on the computer versus when the fuck I was resting. In the apartment I live in now, I have a bedroom. I have my office and I have my bedroom. That is a big fucking deal. To have a place where I go and there's no work there. I do not work in my bedroom, ever. There's no work. I might be on my phone scrolling a few things here and there, but I don't, like, no working, no moderating comments, no looking at emails, no nothing. I can separate and I can go, okay, I'm out of the office, now I'm in the bedroom, now it's rest time. Now I don't work. And that is incredibly fucking important if you want to manage burnout. If you want to try and prevent yourself from becoming a work zombie. So that's a big deal. That has been a big deal for me. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'm that much more productive. I've got diagnosed with ADHD a year ago, and I'm still learning what that means. I'm still learning what it means to have ADHD and what it means to try and create a healthy productivity when you have ADHD. Medication is part of it. Much more rest is part of it. Better sleep has been part of it. I need to do more exercise. Like, I've managed to establish an exercise habit, then I fell out of it. Now it's really hard to get started again. But exercise is a big deal. It matters to me because I have ADHD, and my body really benefits from getting on a treadmill or a exercise bike or lifting some weights and just like fucking working some fucking energy out of the system. That's part of it. Another thing is, and again, this is specific to ADHD things, I think, because that's the world I live in, that's the brain I live in. Writing down the shit that I do each day, keeping a diary, really, really helpful. Because by keeping a diary, I'm able to write down and say, okay, today I did this, and I did this. Right? Like, I managed to do these things. I tidied and cleaned the kitchen a little bit. I took out some trash. I fed the cats. I responded to some emails. I like just having a list of, I write down the shit I do each day. That's incredibly helpful because it prevents me from getting into these situations where, oh yeah, I've actually spent the whole fucking day doing chores around the house, but I didn't really remember, I wasn't really paying attention. I was just kind of working on autopilot, so it feels like I haven't done anything. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, what the fuck did I do today? Did I just waste the whole day on absolutely nothing? I got nothing done. I didn't make a new video. I didn't write a new script. And I feel like, I've not been productive. And that can be very depressing. And that can induce a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. And that kills your fucking productivity. So having a diary and writing shit down and saying, no, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And if I didn't do anything, then, like, this is the reason why. I was really, really tired today because I got bad sleep. That's really, really helpful. I forgot to take my fucking medication. That's why I didn't get anything done. I decided early in the day that, like, no, it makes more sense for me to take this day to kind of chill out and fucking relax because I've got a big thing coming up tomorrow. Just writing that shit down, just having a diary in which you put words and specifically write shit down that says, this is what my day was, this is why it was the way that it was, these are the things I did, mentally extremely helpful and prevents me from feeling like a lazy fuck up for not putting out a new video on the main channel for like months now, right? Because I know that I have been productive. I've been doing things, not in ways necessarily that you guys get to see as much as I would like, but I have been. And if I didn't have that, I would probably be kind of crushing myself into a stress and anxiety spiral right now about not being productive, about not putting out product in a way that's, like, visible in that way. But I know that I've been doing a lot of shit. I know I've been putting in a lot of effort into a lot of things, just not things that go on a YouTube channel. So that's been very helpful for me. Don't know if this is helpful to anyone else, though. Varia the Tired Villain, do you read fanfiction often? And how often is often by your standards? And do you seek it out specifically or go by recommendations or some sort of combination alternative methods? Usually by recommendation. I used to read so much, truly so much, just all of the, God, truly so much. I used to have so many tabs, so many, like, entire folders of bookmarks Not anymore. It's been a long time since I've really intensely read fan fiction, mostly because I just don't have time. So I don't read it very often anymore. I used to a lot more. But mostly I go by recommendations. Like I used to have a lot more like people I talked to about fan fiction who would share recommendations and tell you, oh, this thing is good, that thing is good, this thing is interesting. Kind of fell out of the habit though. JPS Dom, where do you write your video scripts and essays? I'm in need of somewhere better than Google Docs. Yes, you are. Everyone is in need of something better than Google Docs. I use Obsidian, which is a very useful little piece of software. I'm not using it optimally at all, but it's a very useful way to get all of your documents in one place and organize them. Find some guides on YouTube to help you figure out how to work it. And that's where I do pretty much all of my writing. All of it is in Obsidian. And I fully recommend it. It's a very, very useful little program. It's incredibly useful for organizing documents. It's incredibly useful for that. And there's some incredible... You can make a custom wiki in Obsidian. Like, you can make your own personal wiki in Obsidian. It's actually reasonably doable because it has functions that allow you to link documents together. In a way, like you can highlight a piece of text and say, okay, turn this highlighted piece of text that says, like, name of a character in my story. Turn that into a clickable link. Boom, that will then link over to your document where you have all the details about that character, and then that character's connections to other characters. You can make links, and you can link documents together in the hypertext itself. Like, you can do incredible things with it, but mostly it's just a really nice program to write in, and a really nice program to organize things in. So Obsidian is my recommendation. Why am I getting phone notifications? Shut up, leave me alone. I really need to turn notifications off from Instagram. It sends me so fucking many. What are other musicals you enjoy? I guess other than Has Been Hotel Hell, like the ones that I have made content about, I've always liked Somewhere That's Little Shop of Horrors is the fucking thing that it's called. Little Shop of Horrors is fantastic. I really like Little Shop of Horrors. Disney musicals, obviously, have sort of always been a big part of my vocabulary. I kind of like Les Mis. Kind of. I'm not sure. I need to watch a full performance of it someday. Like, I've listened to the music, some of the songs and things like that, but I kind of feel like I have to watch a performance of it. I fucking adored Hadestown. I went to watch it in London. God, it's good. I need to go watch it again. I need to see that show on a stage again. Hadestown was very, very good. Phantom of the Opera is good. Well, depending on if you can see it with a good cast. But Phantom of the Opera is just a good time. Nightly Night. I remember that you wanted to analyze YouTubers' online avatars' personas, so that got me thinking, could you do a character design analysis of your own avatar as well as your channel's aesthetic/vibe? Like, how would someone read it seeing for the first time with no prior knowledge of who you are? Obviously, there's a lot of choices you made on how to stylistically present yourself, so some insights on those would be interesting as well. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see yourself from the outside. That's a very difficult thing to do. Like, I don't know that I could give you, like, a view on what would someone else think when they saw my channel for the first time, because I'm too invested in it. It's too much me. That would have to be an analysis that someone else does, but I can tell you about my avatar. Because, like, as an artist, I've always liked drawing cartoon versions of myself. Like, always. That's always been a little habit, little thing, like when I'm idly scribbling or whatever, just fucking draw a cartoonified version of yourself and, like, mess around with features and things like that. And that's where this avatar emerges from, is, like, from long time just making up different caricatured versions of myself. And eventually, I settled on the one that's in the profile picture of my channels, right? Like, which is, like, that little very flat, like that very flat avatar, which is very heavily stylized and super flat in its design style, right? Like, it's very, very heavily stylized, like, it's very geometrical in that sense, right? Like, with the little swirls in the beard and all of that. And specifically, that was because I wanted something that is, air quotes, iconic, right? Like, something which is very recognizable from a distance, even in small sizes. Something with a very, very simple color scheme, something with an identifiable aesthetic, right? Like, and black and white avatars are not, like, fucking zero punctuation, like Yahtzee. uses that, right? Like the odds ones out, Jaden Animations, like the black and white avatar with the pure white skin and mostly like black for color scheme, or like maybe a single color, like the one I've got on my little blue avatar here. Common, right? Like that's a very common way to do it. It's not like it's this the most unique thing in the world, but I wanted something. The reason why it's common, the reason why it's useful, is because it is simple, it is easily readable, and it is easily producible as an icon, right? And that's what I wanted from my channel. I wanted a very simple character that was easy to read and easy to recognize in that sense. And I think I have managed to achieve that. Like, I think this is not like, in real life, I look like any of a million other bearded white guys, right? Like, I'm not especially unique, but as a piece of avatar making, this, I think, is reasonably effective, because I've also chosen, like, this specific style of, like, the cross-hatching in my beard, right? The little diagonal lines and the way that that sort of crosses up over into my head and things like that. Like, I think I've managed to have a look on my character which is pretty specific to me, outside of, like, the very basic aesthetic conventions of it. But, like, really, the thing it comes down to fundamentally is I wanted something that would look good in an icon. I wanted something that if I slap a little face emoji of my face on something, people will recognize that from a distance and go, "Oh, it's that guy. I've seen that around before. I recognize that icon. I recognize that style. I recognize that guy." So that I am findable. Like, that's really the main thing. Like, that's why I've been like, I call myself TV Skyn everywhere, because it is a name that is unique enough that if you Google it, I am the one you will find. Like, it's something that is specific and unique enough to me, even if, like, if I were to do it now, I would probably invent something else, but so much of the way that I brand my channel, so much of the way that I present it is just about that. It's about something which is recognizable, something which is distinctive, and something which is easy to search for, right? Something which, if it flashes by you while you're doom scrolling on social media or whatever, it'll still register. It'll still hit your brain, and you kind of go, "Oh, that thing, yeah, okay, cool thing." And then if you see it again, you go, "Oh, it's that thing again. It's the shape of that thing again." And then if you see it again, it's like, "Oh, okay, that's that thing." Like, the recognition is important on the internet. Like, if someone has, like, because most people don't click on the first thing of mine that they see, right? Like, it's the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time that they see my fucking thing come up, right? This fucking guy again. Okay, fine, I'll check it out. I'll see what the deal is, right? Like, that's a big deal in terms of discoverability. That's a big deal in terms of branding. Not just on YouTube or whatever, but anywhere. Having a recognizable branding is, like, something that's repetitive enough and like distinctive enough that people will recognize it as, "Oh, that's the thing that's associated with that guy." That's where all this come from. Same reason why I had this low poly, cartoony sort of style of VTuber, because, like, there's a million really cool anime avatar VTubers out there. I don't want to compete with them. Whereas, and you also get a bunch of, like, low poly sort of PS1 aesthetic VTubers out there, but not really a lot of them, to my knowledge, that use this sort of pixelated glasses and, like, this cross-hatching style on the beard. That's reasonably unique to this little VTuber avatar guy that I've got here. And that gives me a unique, distinct character design. I don't look like the 4 billion anime avatar VTubers out there, right? So this little thing is recognizable. This little thing is my presence. It represents me specifically. And that's the same thing with the color, right? Like, the color is really a random choice. I just kind of like it, but I've kept it consistent, right? Like, that on 3B Skyn, it's green, right? Like, that's the channel color is green, and then on the Shorts channel, it's purple, and then on the Let's Play channel, it's red, and then on the main channel, it's blue, right? Like, so that there's, like, a very simple color scheme across my channels. It's a little rainbow of things, but all of it is anchored by the black and white avatar with the pointy finger and the expression and the big eyebrows, right? Like, and the no mouth and so on. And the beard. The beard is a nicely recognizable feature as well. The round glasses. I do wear round glasses in real life, actually. That's not just an affectation, but the round glasses, I think, also help with that. I used to have square glasses, and I kind of... Part of the reason why I started to wear round glasses in real life, I'm taking them off my face, you can't see that, is because I thought round glasses on a character design like the one I have for myself, that would work. It was a character design decision in part, just because I thought that would probably look pretty good with my design. It also happens to look good on me in real life, if I do say so myself, but that's a big part of the reason why. Let's see, Atlas. Pokemon theory making the rounds on Twitter recently. Basically, there's a notion going around that almost every Mega Evolution design is shaped either like an X or a Y. The idea is that there's some kind of X and Y visually present in every Mega, particularly in how they animate, even if it's not central to the design. Yeah, I can see that. Like, I will say, it's one of those things that's like, most characters, if you look for it, you can find an X or a Y in their character design. Any superhero character, which is to say the characters like the masculine superhero characters with the big fucking huge chests and the somewhat more narrow waists, and then like they're all Y-shaped, right? Like, and any female character who's sort of like hourglass shaped classically, right? Like they with the big chest and then narrow waist and then wide hips, that's an X shape. So X and Y as shapes are generic and general enough that you can find them in pretty much anything if you go looking for them. There's an element of pareidolia there. It's people seeing what they want to see a little bit, I think. So, like, it is very obvious that in a bunch of Mega Evolutions, there was definitely an X and Y thing going on, right? Like, there was definitely that going on as a piece of the character design. Mega Raichu comes to mind, right? Like, the two Mega Raichus are pathetically obviously X and Y, right? And Xerneas and the X and Y, like, legendaries are obviously shaped after X and Y. Like, there's a specific design direction in there. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if that also influenced the design process for some of the Mega Pokemon. Like, if a bunch of the Mega Pokemon that were introduced in that generation, they were like, okay, let's try and sort of think of X and Y as a sort of guiding, underlying design idea for how we want to shape these things. That said, I don't think it's every Mega. I don't buy that. I don't buy that every Mega is designed that way, or that if X and Y is sort of like part of the design paradigm for them, that it's done in such a way as to be obvious and readable to an audience. Like, I don't think it's part of the actual communication of the character designs. X's and Y's just kind of show up in character design anyway. And as, like, by the picture that you sent me here is like, they are torturing the definition of what a Y is with Mega Gyarados. Like, I don't mind telling you, and they're torturing it a lot with Mega Kangaskhan. Mega Gengar over there is like, okay, I can see that that's definitely an X shape. Mega Slowbro, I guess, maybe, kind of. Mega Pidgeot, sure, maybe, kind of. But they are torturing it pretty hard with a bunch of these characters, and I don't think that's enough in evidence in enough of the designs that you can really draw that conclusion. I wouldn't be surprised if it had been a part of the design process, but I don't think it has been expressed so clearly as to be a significant or meaningful part of the character designs. I don't think it has a thematic or particularly relevant connotation about their designs. I don't think an X shape or a Y shape being incorporated in them does anything to change the communication of the designs. It doesn't inform their designs. It doesn't change the meaning of them. It doesn't seem to link together into anything coherent that says anything about either Mega Evolution or the generation that the games are from. So it's a fun theory. It's a fun thing to do. I think there's a lot of pareidolia. I think people are very heavily stretching the definition of those shapes to read them into designs where they're not necessarily present. But it's a fun idea, and it's not unfounded. Let's see, Paxman17, watching your funny video stream, there was the most finished one, the guy not changing expression, doesn't matter if you remember that. That reminded me of a webcomic I used to read ages ago, which is where I have all my knowledge about Scandinavia from. It's called Scandinavia and the World by Human. Do you know it? Have you ever read it? I used to know the author a little bit of that comic, because they posted on the art forum where I got my start on the internet. And their comics were quite popular over there as well. And then they started posting them on DeviantArt, and then they sort of went well beyond, like, started spraying on Tumblr and things like that. But Human is a Danish artist, and I think we used to chat a little bit back in ye olden times, back when we were still both on the same forum. So yes, I'm very familiar with it, and I have read all of them, and it's adorable and fun. And then follows up with, I'm not sure if you talked about it, what are your thoughts about the webcomic Alfie? Also, do you know Sunstone? Alfie is kind of fucking amazing as an artistic product. So for those, like, I cannot show you anything from it. It is very safe, not safe for work. It is pornography a lot of the time. It started as a porn comic, and then it sort of evolved into a more sort of broad spectrum fantasy story about like family trauma and things like it evolved into something that really had something on its mind. But it started as like just here's a bunch of fantasy porn with some halflings fucking some humans, and it was made by Incase, who's a very good artist, like a very very talented, very 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 skilled artist, who's capable of doing some fucking amazing things with background texture and character design. I have actually thought about making videos about Alfie before, but I know I can't put it on YouTube. Like, even if I never show anything, even if I never talk about anything, even if I conspicuously avoid mentioning, there's all, like, just the mere fact of bringing up something which is explicitly pornography, that's demonetization at the very least. And maybe worse things, possibly. So, a little bit risky about it, but I know it very well. I've read all of it. The development of the arts in that comic, just the technical quality, like beyond just being porn, which is hot, and it's very good porn, like if you're into that kind of thing, absolutely recommended on that front. The technical skill that Incase displays with a lot of their illustrations is just astonishing. Like they really are very, very, very good at posing, at like posturing, line of action. They have become incredibly skilled. Like, they've had a lot of hand problems, a lot of hand pain that's prevented them from working at full capacity for a while. But when they were operating at full capacity, the backgrounds and like the world building and the world design that they managed to wring out, like the colors that they were using, holy shit, man! Like that's an artist who has a great fucking amazing sense for visual storytelling, besides just making hot porn, right? They are very, very good. They are very, very good. Again, it's straight up pornography. Don't read it if you're not of age. Please don't like link to any of it in the comments down here because I'll have to delete it. But yes, and I know Sunstone. I know of it. I'm familiar with it. I have never really engaged with it very much, just because the character design style of that particular artist is just not my thing. Not that it's bad, it's just not my thing. And so, no, but I'm familiar with it, yes. Jester DeMille, any location you'd personally be want to see be the setting or region of a future Pokemon game? Is there anything particular from that location that you think would be a good basis for a Pokemon? Honestly, see, I have a million things in mind that I could say, but like China, they're really like, and there's some fucking geopolitical issues with that. Like a Japanese game company making a game set in China is always a thing that's fraught for many, many historical reasons. But like China, fucking China, man, mainland China, Korea, like from the deserts to the mountains of Tibet to like the rainforest jungles to like the mountainous landscapes and the many species and animals that exist like within just because China is fucking huge, right? But the many animals and species and things that exist within the boundary territories of China itself, and like that particular part of East Asia, like holy shit, man, like how the fuck? And I know because of many geopolitical reasons, that's something that maybe the Game Freak and Pokemon Company have been reluctant to touch. I understand, but China, man, like have you seen just the sheer diversity and the sheer range of environments, the sheer range of species, the sheer range of expressions that are like available in the natural environment of China? Good God, like, boy, a Chinese region needs to happen at some point. Failing that, I wouldn't mind something based on like Paraguay or Nepal. Any mountainous region, any region that specifically like that has a good mixture of mountains and rainforests, would be cool. Like Central Africa, I think, probably has a few countries that would like make a good basis for something like that. And certainly there needs to be a fucking Pokemon game set somewhere in Africa. And I don't just mean Magic Egypt setting number 483, like actually based on places like Nigeria, Rwanda, like Guinea-Bissau, fucking any of the like sub-Saharan regions, or just the Sahara itself is like tremendously diverse, especially once you get out around the coast. It's not just, it is a lot of desert, obviously, but then there's the borderlands between desert and like the greener lands and like the places where it intersects with like so, like something based on somewhere in Central Africa, I think would be fucking amazing, and kind of necessary. right? Like, if you're going to do a series like Pokemon, at some point, you gotta go to somewhere in Africa. Like, you gotta, at some point, like, I wouldn't want them, like, if if Japan can have 2 entire regions dedicated to itself, then Africa can have at least 5, I think, but maybe, like, at least 2, like, at least, like, once go to Africa region based on like mid Africa, or like the edges of the Sahara Desert, or the mountainous regions, or the rainforests, or whatever, and then one that's maybe based on like North Africa, like Middle East, Near East, sort of the MENA region, that sort of thing. Like, at least 2, but boy howdy, China and Africa, I think, are places that the Pokemon franchise could really benefit from going. The trouble, of course, is that so many of the Pokemon have already drawn their designs from animals that are native to those places, so it's like, okay. But that's what I would want to do, especially, like, draw from the folklore. The many, many, many hundreds and thousands of folklores that exist on the African continent. Like, you could make so many fucking Pokemon out of that. Let's see. Saw this post and jokingly thought of Tetsuya Nomura, but it got me thinking, why was some of his designs from Kingdom Hearts obsessed with zippers and belts? I mean, I don't know for sure. Like, you'd have to ask the man himself. But Tetsuya Nomura has always had a very specific relationship with fashion. Thor High Heels has a very good video essay on the subject. I recommend that you go watch that for a more full, like a more complete response, a more complete like idea of it. But Tetsuya Nomura has always had a very specific relationship in his character design with fashion, especially with street fashion, especially with like modern fashion. Urban fashion is something that he has a very specific fascination with, which you can see, like, Final Fantasy VII, he kind of kept it in check, because he was not really, like, didn't necessarily have the authority, but, like, Final Fantasy VIII, he went all, like, balls out fashion design as a huge part of the expression of the characters, especially, like contemporary, for the time, sort of, heightened, stylized versions of various forms of streetwear. And subculture wear, and that's always been a big part. Like, The World Ends With You is perhaps the prime example, and I'm talking about the 3D, the DS original, where he like really obsesses over the concept of fashion, the concept of street fashion, the concept of like building your own aesthetic within the confines of like the Tokyo fashion scene is a huge part of like the underlying mechanics of that game. And the same thing with Kingdom Hearts. Like, Kingdom Hearts 3 has a very specific fashion aesthetic. Like, they worked with, I think, was it Louis Vuitton, or whatever. Like, Nomura has a fashion obsession. He loves fashion as expression. He loves fashion as a means of creating distinctive, interesting looks. And it's an approach to costume design that I don't always like, but which is often very effective at creating characters that are very specific and unique. And so belts and zippers, I don't know if there was like a movement in fashion to like really sort of go hard on belts and zippers. I think there was sometime around the early 2000s. Like, I remember seeing some like high fashion runway shots of things like that. But it's just like, I think it's just an aesthetic fixation. I think he just kind of likes how they look, or liked how they look. I don't think he doesn't do that much anymore. But he liked how it looks. Like, he had a real specific appreciation for the aesthetic of many belts, like the crisscrossing of it. I think he said with Lulu from Final Fantasy X, part of the reason why he designed her with so many fucking belts in her skirt was partly to troll the character model artists, like the people who actually had to make the animation model for the character. It's like, okay, here's a fucking challenge for you. Go make that real on the PS2. Which I do respect. Like, I do respect a man who knows how to troll a little bit. But yeah, I think it's just an aesthetic fixation. Like, I think it's just a phase of aesthetic fixation that he went through, where zippers and like the way that they delineate between different pieces of cloth and the way that they add texture to things, I think that's just something he got hooked on. And I do like it when artists project their own personal like woo into things like that. What do you think about the not so uncommon belief that by reading bad stuff, one also becomes bad themselves? I mean, that's just Puritanism, and it's stupid. I think it's stupid. Like, as a fundamental answer to your question, I think it's stupid. Like, this idea that you can be tainted by consuming bad media, it's a stupid idea. But it's an idea you understand where it comes from, right? Like, because the truth of the matter is, we derive a lot of our understanding of the world from the things that we see presented in the media around us, right? Like propaganda is a real thing, right? Like, video games don't cause violence. that's a stupid way to see things, but the constant normalization and presence and presentation of violence, and especially righteous violence, as a heroic response to injustice, a heroic response to feeling slighted in not just video games, but movies and TV shows and songs and music videos and books and novels and comics and magazines and on the fucking news themselves and in military propaganda, suffused absolutely everywhere throughout society. Video games don't make people violent, but all of that together, all of that normalization of violence, all of that valorization of violence, of vengeful, wrathful violence, of masculine violence especially, that shit does taint us. Like, right? That stuff does change our thinking. It does change our minds. It does define something about like the baseline of reality that we're all operating on, which is why to this day, right? If a bunch of kids are running around in Fortnite blasting each other in the head with shotguns, that's just kids having fun. That's just good, clean. That's just normal. Like kids shooting each other in the heads with shotguns. Yeah, there's no blood. It's fine. That's just normal, good, healthy, wholesome behavior for children to do. But God forbid they see a female nipple. A woman's nipple, like if a child saw a woman's nipple, like, oh God, like the damage that it would do. Good Lord, right? And that's a function of what have we allowed to become normalized in our cultural discourse? Like, what have we allowed to be normal in the way that we think about what media is and what is acceptable versus what is taboo, right? Those things are shaped by that, because having naked titties in a piece of media anywhere that children can see it is considered transgressive, right? Like that's a violation. That is an intrusion of the sexual into a realm which is meant to be sexless, right? Like which is meant to be pure of the inherently sinful presence of human sexuality. Never mind that there's nothing inherently sexual about a fucking nipple. I can go outside topless, show my nipples off to God and everybody every day because I'm a man, and it's fine, and that's not sexual. That's not pornographic. A woman can't go topless without someone going like, oh, that's fucking porn, like corrupting the children. And that's bullshit. That's dumb bullshit. That is arbitrary, stupid, taboo, dumb bullshit. And it's reinforced by media, right? Like it's reinforced by what we allow to be normal in the media that we consume. Toplessness is not normal. It is abnormal. It is unacceptable. It is sexual. It is potentially abusive to allow children to access media where women are topless. But blasting each other in the head with a shotgun, that's just what you do for fun, right? Like you pick up a shotgun and you shoot someone in the head. That's just normal. That's just fun. Boom, blast, headshot, yeah, right. So no one in the world is going to become violent by playing Grand Theft Auto 5 or watching 300 or whatever. But there is a reason why the United States military, in the lead up to the war with Iraq, played 300 for their soldiers as a means to prepare them to do violence to Arab people. Right? And it's not because 300 itself is like a brainwashing movie that if you watch it one time you become Islamophobic, but as a part of a broader media diet of Islamophobia, of hatred of Arabs, of hatred of brown people, as part of a broader media environment where those things are normalized, then that film, when it interacts with all of those structural forces, can become a thing which taints your thinking if you are not given the education to question it. And that's really the main thing. Is like, there is no piece of media, there's no book, there's no movie, and there's no media diet, there's no amount of media that you can watch that can taint you, that can mind control you, that can change your brain without your consent, if you have the education, the presence of mind, and the access to resources with which to counter it, right? Like if you have the critical thinking skills and the critical tools necessary in order to construct your own idea of reality and reject media images that are sold to you that you don't agree with. And that's a skill that a person has to develop. That doesn't come natural. That comes from education, right? Like that comes from education. That comes from reading and knowledge and from schooling and from your peer group, right? And so, like, in the sort of grand debate, like, I'm not necessarily against censorship as a thing. I think there's, like, children should not view porn, probably. Like, that we have pretty good data that that's bad for them, right? that being exposed to extremely intensely sexual material is not a good thing for children. That shouldn't happen to people whose brains are still developing on that level, right? So I'm not sort of the opinion of like, oh, well, everything's fine. You can just like hardcore pornography for children, like gore videos in school classrooms, whatever. Like, it's fine, no censorship. I'm not on that train, but I definitely am on the train that, like, number one, the things we choose to censor versus the things that we choose to not censor, like the things we choose to hold taboo versus the things that we choose to hold as just like normal and wholesome, is completely fucked and arbitrary and needs to be questioned and needs to be overhauled, needs to be changed. And number two, I don't trust any government in the world. No, not even that one. I don't care how communist they are. I don't trust any government in the world ever. No state actor ever to make good, just, sensible, harmless laws about what kinds of artistic expression are allowed or disallowed. Right. Like, that's my anti-censorship stance primarily is, yeah, some shit probably does need to be censored. Some shit probably does need to be taboo. But I don't trust a government to decide which things or how those taboos should be enforced. Absolutely fucking not. Right? How do you solve that problem? I don't know. I just know that when governments try to do it, it ends up poorly, right? But, like, the idea that you can be tainted just by reading the wrong book is wrong. The idea that if a child sees hardcore pornography, which they do, children see that shit all the time because it's the internet, the idea that simply seeing it will taint them or break them or hurt them or traumatize them or in some way poison them or make them unclean or destroy their innocence or fucking whatever, that shit is bullshit. So long as those children are given the tools that they need in order to process what it is that they have seen, in order to understand what it is that they have seen, which means giving them sex ed, which means giving them like a good media education, critical thinking skills, critical media analysis skills, even when they are quite young. Preparing children to be able to process that kind of information is fucking critical, because only information which is uncritically and unchallenged, absorbed without criticism or challenge, absorbed without critical thinking, absorbed without distance, absorbed without the necessary thinking tools to understand it, that can do harm. But education is the thing that counters it, right? And there are complexities, there are dimensions of complexity to this that are, like, I cannot cover them here. I'm not even an expert on them. You shouldn't really listen to me on all of this stuff all the time. But, like, no. Like, there's no, like, doesn't matter how problematic the fic on AO3 is. Like, doesn't matter if it's incest-themed or fucking whatever. Simply reading it doesn't make you a bad person. That simply is not a thing that can happen. Simply being interested in it, simply being turned on by something fucked up does not make you a bad person. Being turned on by something fucked up does not make you any more likely to do that fucked up thing in real life, unless you are kept ignorant. Unless you're kept ignorant of the harm, unless you're kept ignorant of the difference, the incredibly important difference between fiction and reality, unless you are kept ignorant of the consequences of doing the things you see in fiction, unless you're kept ignorant, right? If you are kept ignorant, then it can be dangerous. But if you're not, if you're a person who has a theory of mind, the capacity to distinguish between fiction and reality, a person who knows the difference between a transgressive, problematic, disgusting sex fantasy and the reality of how to treat people and how people treat each other, then no. Like, there is no kink shit, however depraved or fucked up or weird, that you can engage with that will make you more likely to be an abusive person, right? Abusive people are not abusive because they read problematic fan fiction on the internet when they were children, or because they saw pornography when they weren't supposed to. That's not why people become abusive. Those things stem from other things, right? No one becomes evil by reading the wrong book, or watching the wrong movie, or listening to the wrong song. No one becomes a criminal drug dealer on the streets because they listened to too much gangster rap when they were 12 years old. That's not how it works. That's not how the world works, ever. There's a big, complicated, structural, systematic world out there with 100 billion, million, gazillion, trillion influences that make the foundations and the building blocks for human behavior. Media is one tiny part of that. And how human beings respond to media depends so much, I would say almost entirely, on the level of education that they have. And I don't just mean formal education. I don't mean university. I don't mean schools necessarily. But Community education. How much have people, their parents, their friends, their peers, how much have people taught each other how to relate to media, how to relate to stories, how to relate to fiction, how to internalize it, how to process it, how to understand it? Ignorance makes media dangerous. Ignorance makes bad fiction and bad books and bad ideas dangerous. Ignorance does those things, which is why the people who are most invested in making the world a dumber, more bigoted, and horrible place are intensely invested in making sure that the new generations of children are as ignorant as they can possibly be. But no one in the world becomes violent by playing Grand Theft Auto 5. Other things have to happen before a person becomes violent. No one in the world becomes a rapist from reading non-consent themed fanfiction on AO3. That's not how it works. Other things have to happen to bring a person to the point where they would commit that kind of abuse towards another. Right? Bad media can be a component of propaganda. It can be a component of cultural control. It can be a component of normalizing bad ideas and harmful ideas. It can be a component of systems and processes that cause real, horrible, irreparable damage in the human species, right? Like up to and including abuse of various kinds. It can be a component in those things, but it is never the thing. It is never a situation where if only this person hadn't watched that problematic porn, then they wouldn't have become a mass murderer. That's never, ever, 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 ever the case. Ever. And I hate that there's a discourse out there that has been reduced to discussing this subject through the lens of either everything's okay and saying anything else is censorship, or else we must censor all of the things, and anyone who likes something that I disapprove of is a bigot and a groomer and a pedophile and fucking whatever. I hate that that's the discourse. I hate that that's the debate, because it makes people more ignorant and it makes people more stupid, and when people are more ignorant and people are more stupid, more people get hurt. Trying not to get myself too riled up here, because it's late at night and I'm not supposed to be yelling that loudly around midnight. But yeah, it's a stupid idea. It's also Puritanism. Like a lot of those ideas emerge from a very Christian approach to media, approached like media as an extension of sin and punishment and like purity in the eyes of God. It's often very religious. Other religions interact with it too, but it's always stupid. Anyway, let's see. The top question is ships you like. That one I decided to skip. But how does one reconcile the work of an author who's a bad person? I'm referring to authors like Lovecraft, Neil Gaiman, and JKR. Does the author being abusive or racist or transphobic invalidate the positive messages in their work? I try to be critical of the works I like and enjoy while being aware of the people who created them. Can this work, or can the two things just not coexist? The hard truth about the world is that bad people often make good art. Really bad people have made really good art. Picasso was a piece of shit. He was a sack of garbage. He was a pedophile. He started a relationship with a girl of, I think, who was 14 while he was married to a wife who had a child. A wife who he's mistreated horribly. He was a misogynist. He was a piece of shit. He was a bastard. He was a garbage human. He sucked. Fuck Picasso. Picasso's Guernica is also one of the most potent and powerful anti-war paintings that have ever been committed to canvas. It's a masterpiece. It's genius. It's astonishing. These two things are true at the same time. Right? These things do not contradict each other. There is no contradiction. Saying that a bad person made good art is not a contradiction of terms. Good people make bad art all the time as well. And they don't make bad art because they're good, and bad people don't make good art because they're bad. There is no relationship between those things. Bad people are bad because of many reasons. Good people are good because of many reasons. None of it is because or caused by or interacts with whether or not they make good art. Like, those things are not connected. So when it comes to motherfuckers like Neil Gaiman, my heart is still fucking broken about that. God fucking damn it, Gaiman. God damn it, you piece of shit. I can't read his books anymore. I can't even read Sandman. I've tried. I can't do it because the specter of him and what I now know about him, the things I know that he has done, it lingers in the back of my mind and it poisons everything he's ever written, right? I can't. In the same way, like Harry Potter was foundational. I read the first Harry Potter novel when I was 11, right? Perfect age. It became my life for a while. I owe a lot of my literacy to Harry Potter, right? Like it was incredibly important to me. And then Rowling, right? And now I can't. Like even if I still had the books, I couldn't open them. I couldn't read them. I couldn't read a word on those fucking pages. I could not for a moment lose myself in those worlds because I know who J.K. Rowling is now. Right? I can't. The nostalgia cannot take me back there anymore. I know who she is, and I'm going to see like the greasy hands of her filthy, bigoted bullshit all over everything that she's written. Not everyone is going to feel that way. There are going to be people like fast forward to 100 years from now. People will be reading Gaiman, they'll be reading Rowling, and they'll be enjoying it in the same way that today, even though I know what a piece of shit Picasso is, I can't help but really enjoy a lot of his art. I think his art, a lot of it was genius, fantastic, astonishing, and he was a piece of shit. Right? In 100 years' time, people will feel that way about Gaiman. I think his work will survive. Maybe they won't feel that way about Rowling. I don't think once she dies, once she dies peacefully in her home surrounded by her family and friends after a long, healthy, and fulfilling fucking life after that happens to her, I would never wish ill on her. Never. I would never do that. I don't think her work survives. Like, I think, oh yeah, that book series was popular in the 2000s. That's going to be the footnote that she leaves in history. But maybe her influence on the persecution and abjection of trans people in society, that's probably going to live on. That's going to be her legacy. But the books, I think people will forget about them. 150 years, 200 years from now, people will talk about these authors, and they won't have these complicated feelings. Like, they will know the complexities, like, they will know the biographical details, they will know. But it won't hurt them the same way, because it's going to be generations and generations removed from them. Right? And whether or not these things can work, like, does J.K. Rowling's horrendous bigoted abusiveness cancel out the positive messages in Harry Potter? I don't think so, no. Like, on the occasion that she's correct about something in the book, on the occasion that she has like a good moral instinct with the way that she presents the narrative in those books, that's still true. In the same way that 2 + 2 is true, even if it's Hitler saying it, right? It doesn't cancel it out, but depending on how you feel, right? Like, depending on how you feel about what you know about these people now, it might not cancel it out for you. Like, it might cancel it out for you. Like, it might be that you read the positive passages, like the good fiction that Neil Gaiman wrote, and all you can think about is the way that he treated real human beings in his own life, and that poisons it for you permanently. That's how it is for me, right now anyway. That can happen. But that doesn't mean that the good things that are in his work are bad. Like, they don't magically transform. The words on the page don't change. The only thing that's changed is the context that you know. Right? And this is where people get death of the author wrong, right? Death of the author means that you can read a book, you can read a work, you can read any piece of art, and you don't have to make the author the primary arbiter of what the work means, right? Neil Gaiman's novels can mean something independent of him. Rowling's novels can mean something independent of her. Picasso's paintings can mean something independent of him. Right? They can mean something without the author being in there. You don't have to know who the author is in order to understand the work, or to relate to it, or to have opinions about it, or to be affected by it. You don't need that at all, right? But we are also human beings. We have emotional realities, and it fucks with you, right? And what people get wrong is death of the author doesn't mean, oh, I can just ignore that the author exists entirely. Death of the author relates to the contents of the work, the text itself, right? Like the books that they wrote. It does not relate to the material reality of the author, which is to say that if you give J.K. Rowling your money right now for anything, if you spend a dime, a cent, or $1 on anything to do with Harry Potter, you are directly supporting the work of transphobia. You are directly supporting the persecution of trans people. You're supporting the erosion of their rights. And right now, if you spend money on Neil Gaiman's money, he's going to use that money to defend himself in court so that he doesn't have to be held responsible for what he did. And you're going to enable him to continue to live a wealthy, comfortable, and happy life despite all the things that he did. Your money is going to go to that. Your money is going to support that, right? And there's no amount of death of the author that can exempt you from that. You can't just say, oh, separate the artist from the art. No, you can't. You can separate the artist from the contents of their work. That's a critical discipline. It's a critical skill. It's an important critical skill that you have to have in order to do media analysis, is to be able to step away from your relationship with the author and understand the text on its own terms. That's important. But those are critical thinking skills that, about like academically and like emotionally relating to a piece of work, they have nothing to do with the consequences of your material actions in reality. If you go to the fucking Harry Potter world and you buy a wand and you participate in the fucking theme park bullshit, you are supporting bigotry actively with your money, with your resources. You are making it possible for J.K. Rowling to make a worse world, right? So these things are separate in that sense, right? But you cannot absolve yourself of the responsibility of knowing the context and like letting your knowledge of the context guide your actions in the world. But if someone tells me that they still read Harry Potter, I'm like, oh, really? Like, they're not that good, man. Like, you can let them go. But also, if it's like they've had the copies of those books since they were 11 and they never had the heart to throw them out, and somewhere in the books, despite Rowling, they find some kind of comfort or some kind of something helpful or a world to escape to or something, that doesn't make them evil, right? Like, that's not an evil thing to do. The evil thing to do, the bad thing to do, is to, with your money, with your public presence, with your voice, with your attention, to support the political material project of what Rowling is doing in the world right now, right? That's the bad thing. It's actual action in the world, not just, it's not thought crime, right? But yeah, like, the answer to your question is, bad people make good art all the time. Good people make bad art all the time. Being a good person doesn't make anyone a better or worse artist. Being a bad person doesn't make anyone a better or worse artist. That's just not how it works. And as readers, as consumers of art by problematic people, we have a responsibility for our actions in the world and what our actions support or enable. But we don't have a responsibility to, like, live in fear of thought crime. Live in fear of doing the thought crime of enjoying the work by the bad person, right? That's not really helpful. That doesn't help anyone do anything about the material reality and the problems and the pain and the damage that these people have caused, right? Tearing down Picasso's Guernica doesn't do anything to ameliorate the damage and the harm that he did to the people in his life. And the man is dead. He is beyond the capacity to do any more harm in the world. So if I buy a print of Guernica, unless the Picasso estate, which I don't even know if they still have the copy, I think all his works are in the public domain at this point, like, unless the Picasso estate is using the money from me purchasing a print of Guernica to do something bad in the world, it's like buying a print of Guernica is not supporting Picasso or supporting his crimes or his cruelty. But since J.K. Rowling is still alive and still profiting from the Harry Potter franchise, buying Harry Potter merch, any of it, yeah, no, you are directly supporting harm being done in the world by this person, right? So yeah. Was that a fulsome answer to that question? I don't know, man. I don't know. My ADHD meds are wearing off. Ever thought about joining Nebula, asks OW. Is that even an option, actually? What were your thoughts on that? I'd love to be on Nebula. Love to. It seems like a nice service. I would appreciate the extra stream of income. I wouldn't mind having that freedom from, like, the constant fear of the copyright takedown on YouTube. But Nebula is not really something you can just join. To the best of my knowledge, it is invite only. I do believe, like, you can get in touch with them and say, hey, I'd like to pitch myself. Like, I'd like to, what about me? Like, I think you can ask them. Like, you can reach out, as you can with any business, you can reach out and ask, but it's not a thing of, like, you don't submit yourself. There's no form on the website, right? Like, there's no I want to join Nebula. Set up your account and create your username. Like that's not how it works. They are invite based. Like I think it is generally a thing of like the other people on Nebula. Someone has to recommend you, or someone has to like give you an in and say, oh yeah, that one. Like we can work with that one. Because there is a sort of collective ownership thing. I'm not 100% sure how their structure works. It's not a worker co-op. Exactly, but it is a thing of like collective ownership of a corporation through shares, something along those lines. And you can't just get in. Like, there's no one I don't know anyone I could contact to get on Nebula. I've been thinking about it. Like, I've been thinking about looking into it. I'd love to do it, but it's not an easy thing to do, to the best of my knowledge. This guy says, Matrox DX, when will you break the chains and leave Adobe in the dust? Oh, God, any day now. I want to. I want to really badly. For the moment, I still need Photoshop for some of the work that I do. And the problem is, all of my workflows are in Premiere Pro. All of my workflows. It's a program I understand how to work with, even in spite of all its problems. It's something, like, I know how this fucking thing works. I know how to make it work. I know how to make it do the things I want it to do. I don't know Resolve. And I would have to learn Resolve. I would have to sit down and spend a whole lot of time figuring out Resolve and figuring out how to work it and how to do the things that I am able to do in Premiere Pro in Resolve. And it's just it's the kind of thing that I would have to commit a lot of time to doing. I would have to commit to it as a project of learning. That would slow me down even slower than I am already very slow in terms of video production. That would add a stressful layer of relearning a skill on top of me trying just to sort of barely stay with my head above water with the things I'm already doing. It's just a lot, man. It's just stressful. The inertia of having to swap over is... it makes me tired just thinking about it. I want to, though. I want to get away from Adobe Premiere Pro. I want to get away from Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro sucks in so many ways. But I have to commit the time to doing it, and I just have not had the energy in my soul to do that right now. On top of everything else, I'm constantly... my ADHD is, I guess, an ADHD thing very commonly. We always feel like we're just dancing on the tip of a wave of a disaster. Like, we're always just staying like barely one step ahead of everything crashing down around us. We always feel like, oh god, I have to rush to do the next thing now. And feeling like you have the space and the time and like the breathing room to do something like that, switch over to something like and learn a completely new editing software. It's rare. It's hard to find. I need to find a way to make it. Let's see, is there a piece of old pre-2000s animation you think still holds up today, and would you recommend it? Yeah, like, most of it, really. Like, I don't think the 2000s is any kind of, like, breaking point where it's like, oh, pre-2000s, well, stuff gets bad back then, and it's like, technology advances and things. Like, no, you can find absolute animated masterpiece. Like, the output of Disney is the obvious thing, right? But, like, fucking Ghost in the Shell, I think... Was Ghost in the Shell pre-2000s? But, like, lots of OVAs in anime at the time has, like, amazing quality animation, right? Like, amazing quality. Like, absolutely stunningly beautiful. Because a lot of time is put into it. Like, Akira, for example. Jesus fucking Christ, Akira. There's lots of it from all over the world. Like, Soviet animation is something everyone could stand to look into more, because there's a lot of really interesting works in the Soviet animation canon. So, like, yes, like like a lot of seasonal TV animation prior to the, like, advent of digital animation, like, yeah, a lot of that is a little jank. A lot of that is a little bit like, oh boy, a lot of that is low budget and kind of, like, I love myself some Scooby-Doo, but I'm not going to pretend like the Hanna-Barbera cartoons were like the peak of technical craft and achievement, right? But, like, Disney were producing high quality feature level animation in the end of the 20s, right? Animation has been a thing for over 100 years. High quality animation has been a thing for over 100 years. And there is not a linear sense of progression where it only gets better and better over time. It has been good pretty much the whole time. Jester DeMille, do you have any thoughts you'd be willing to share on the Goya black paintings? I recently saw all of them for the first time, and despite how much I've heard about them being dark and disturbing, There was something so oddly beautiful and warm about them that it brought me to tears, if I'm being honest. We can absolutely talk about Goya's black paintings. Sorry, I'm typing on my keyboard, and I'm hitting the hotkeys I use to advance back and forth. Let me see if I can find them and put them on screen, actually. So, for a little bit of context, the black paintings, this is probably the most famous, which is Saturn devouring his son. We don't know that that's the title. None of them have titles. These paintings were painted by the artist Francisco Goya on the walls of his home that he was living in like the last period of his life before his death. They were never meant to be seen. They were never meant to be displayed or shown to anyone. They were found after his death when people started like going to his home and clearing it out. And they were torn off the walls, off the plaster, transferred to canvas, and then they became renowned as masterpieces. They are very interesting just in the sense that they are, like, just because they were never meant to be seen, just because he was painting them only for himself, right? And especially Saturn devouring his son. This hairy, wild-eyed madman tearing into the flesh of a body, right? Very much has led to an interpretation of the black paintings as like these are like the last gasps of a genius mind, sort of railing against the frailties of life and the bitterness of the things that he had been through and the disappointments that he had had both politically and spiritually in his life. Like there's a lot of psychoanalysis that goes into the black paintings, and the way that people conceive of them. Like this one of a landscape and then just two people beating the absolute ever-loving shit out of each other, bleeding down their heads, right? You can read a lot of politics into that, the way that Goya felt about like the various wars and revolutions that he had been through. His relationship to aging, his relationship to mortality, to disappointment, right? There's a lot you can read into that, but we really don't know because Goya was private about them. He never spoke about them. He never really gave us any context to how he felt about these pictures, what they meant to him, why he painted them. It might really for all we know, these might just have been sketches. This might just have been him amusing himself for fun. Probably not, but like for all we know, right? Like there's a lot of speculation, there's a lot of argument that's been made about the meaning of the black paintings and why he painted them and what he was expressing. Like a lot of this is the expressions of a tortured soul, right? The fact of the matter is we don't know. Entire PhDs have been written about trying to parse these pictures, trying to figure out what they mean, what they meant to Goya, and what they meant in the context of the world that he painted them in. But the fact of the matter is that no one knows quite what's up with them. I also find them, I mean, I feel various ways about the different ones. The dog, I think, is just one of the most precious little things. I've always liked the dog the most, just because there's that juxtaposition. And again, they were taken off the walls of his house, right? Like people were tearing down the plaster and like ripping out the paintings and transferring them. There's probably a lot of these paintings in terms of the way they're framed, in terms of the way they're composed. Like there's probably bits of this that's a bit lost, right, to time, and to the decisions of the people who were tearing out the plaster, right? Like exactly what the compositions of all of these paintings are. Sort of hard to say sometimes. But just this tiny little head of a dog peering up over the edge of something into this big, indeterminate space, bright space above it. Oh, you can't see my mouse. Okay. I could probably change that, couldn't I? Yes, I could. Aha, mouse. There's something so hopeful and optimistic about this. There's something loving to me. Anyway, this is my interpretation. I feel a lot of love in this, a lot of sympathy for the dog, a lot of love for this tiny little creature that, like, makes the world different just by being in it. I do. And then this. I mean, what a nightmare. What a nightmare. It's not just the brutality of the cannibalism, the murder, the blood around the fingers of the mad god. It's not just that, it's this. It's the expression, right? You see it. He's not doing it because he wants to. This is not because he's having fun or enjoying himself or because he's enacting some kind of punishment, or it's not even rageful. It's terrified. He's horrified by what he's doing even as he's doing it. He's staring fixedly, wide-eyed at some point that's not quite... He's not quite staring directly at the viewer. He's staring almost like he's staring at something just over your shoulder. As though he's seeing something absolutely horrible. And the eating is a response to something. He's not even present in the moment, right? And the way that his mouth is this gaping, yawning black void into which the body is just disappearing. It's affecting. Very affecting. There's something also in the relationships between people in the paintings. Something sometimes predatory, sometimes brutal, animalistic, tragic. These two figures, the way that they're drawn and rendered, two old ones eating soup, as it's called, right? The way that the old man's head looks like a skull, probably a man, we don't even know. There's a skull-like quality to it, an angularity, and then these big, waxy, exaggerated features on the other figure. The way that the eyes look too big for their head, right? They're pointing at something, they're looking at something, they're discussing something. There's an element of conspiracy or gossip or... Like the smile on that face is not evil, but not pleasant. A procession of pilgrimage, right? Like, but what do these people look like, right? Does this look like a band of holy pilgrims on the way to receiving the divine light of God? Is that what they look like? Is that what this scene feels like? Or does it feel a little weird and desperate? Like the way that the mountain here, the earth, is almost shielding them from heaven, right? Heaven is over here, the great open sky, but these people... You see the dark shadow of the trees on this impossible rising mountainside? The way that it's almost like the procession is moving away from the light and into the darkness. Away from the divine and into hell. And with faces like that, right? Like painted in all different ways. Like especially... Look at that. Like... alienating. Human faces without faces. Same thing here. Like the level of caricature that he operates with is sometimes horse faces. Sometimes wax figures. Sometimes ape-like, dog-like. As in the case of this person here, right? Like, the caricature seems to be doing a lot. Like, same thing here, right? Like, again, a pilgrimage to San Isidro, ostensibly. And again, what do the pilgrims look like? Do they look like the holy penitent going to seek redemption in the light of God? Or do they look like a cavalcade of screaming, yowling fools, a great mass of bodies marching ceaselessly towards some worthless purpose, congealing almost into this singular mass held together by, I guess, common fears and shared superstitions. Like, who knows? All of this, by the way, my interpretations. Just because I don't know that much about Goya himself either, I should say. Right? Not an expert on it. I'm just trying to parse what I'm seeing. But yeah, the black paintings are deeply fascinating. They really are. And I think... Hey, that's all of them. Good lord, only took 2 hours and 45 minutes-ish to go through them. So, if you want to ask questions for a video like this, which I'm surely going to make in a short amount of time and not 9 to 12 months later. I'm surely gonna be doing this more frequently. I'm gonna try anyway. I'm going to attempt to do this more frequently. Become a member of the channel, or become a Patreon supporter, or anything. Like, if you donate on coffee one time or whatever, you can go on the Discord, and there's a room there, and you can ask questions if you want to ask questions. And then do a video like this where I'll answer most of them. Not all of them. There are sometimes people ask questions that I just... There's a bunch of questions that people asked that were like, I know that I don't have a good answer to this, an interesting answer, like an answer that doesn't, I don't even have an answer that feels worth articulating. And so I don't, like, I deselect a bunch of questions where it's just, I don't have a good answer or I don't want to talk about it. Sorry. Paying me money doesn't 100% guarantee that I'll definitely respond to your thing, but if it's a reasonably good question, if it's an interesting question, if it's something I feel like I have something to say about, something to yap about, I will. And you can ask as many as you like. You can ask 100 if you want to. I probably will not respond to all of the 100 ones unless you're really good at asking good questions. So you can do that. But you don't have to. It's completely fine if you don't. Thank you very much for listening to me yap for too long. Again, I don't really know why you people put up with me, but I'm glad that you do, and I'll see you next when I do one of these again. Bye.